The Hell Gates appeared everywhere and ended humanity with a flood of monsters. For 25 years, the world was nothing but fire and blood. Through it all, only one man survived, Namgung. He tirelessly fought demons and never gave up. His only reason to endure was his daughter. And when he finally killed 600,000 high-class demons, he got the chance to regress back in time. Namgung wakes up in fear, immediately running to his daughter's room, desperate to see if she's all right. He'd just had a dream where the entire world was engulfed in flames, and he couldn't protect Soman because his right arm was broken. He didn't care if he died, but at the very least, his daughter had to be safe. Seeing her sleeping peacefully, he feels a rush of relief. It was just a dream. But deep down, he knows this happiness won't last long. The day hell opens is coming, and the world will change completely. He pours himself a glass of water to calm down. Thinking back, he realizes he's lived 25 years of his life only for himself. And now he wonders, could someone like him endure the hellhole again, this time while protecting someone else? The odds seem against it. But still, even if it kills him, he wants to try. Suddenly, a notification flashes. His status has changed. He's gained magic power. Spirit Magic, Novice, has been acquired, and LV1's Spirit Eyes are activated. Namgung is shocked. His powers are still with him. The spirit looks at him. Namgung tries to figure it out. Why does he still have his powers? Is it because the timeline tilted? Or could this be some kind of regression perk? 3 days from now, on October 11th, the Hell Gate opens. But a few people already know about its existence. They are the 8 prophets, chosen by the 8 phases, the 8 martial stars, and the one who's called humanity's savior. These people have shown an incredible rate of growth. Namgung recalls everything from the past 25 years. With those memories, he knows he can now earn achievements and rewards he missed the first time. Things they got and he didn't. It's October 8th now, 3 days before the gate opens. This is when the monopoly begins. Namgung arrives at a place where a man greets him, surprised to see him there. The man wasn't expecting a visitor, so Namgung answers that he is here to buy some stuff. Gyuryu questions Namgung, asking what he thinks he's doing. Namgung replies that he's preparing for the prophet's trial, since he heard it's happening there, and asks if he's wrong. Gyuryu gets irritated, realizing that someone was instructed to come there, and now things are getting weirder, especially since he heard from above that the selection process is still ongoing. Namgung agrees that it is, which is exactly why he's there. He needs to get in before the selection ends if he wants to take their spots. That's when it clicks for Gyuryu. This is the bastard he's heard about, the regressor who killed 600,000 high-class demons. He glares at Namgung and says they know everything, including the fact that he's already tilted the timeline. He asks if Namgung thinks he can do whatever he wants just because he regressed. Gyuryu tells him this place is a chessboard set up by the upper phases, and all Namgung's doing is pissing them off by messing with their game. Yaksha butts in and tells Namgung to take his hand off because it stinks. Namgung had tried to cut off Gyuryu's hand, but figures his body isn't ready for that yet. Makes sense since he doesn't have any special runes. He says he didn't know anything back then, and that during the time of regression, it was the phases who allowed that to happen. He asks if Gyuryu really thinks they'll get mad or act like humans, if he still believes they'll care at all. Gyuryu tries to attack him, but Namgung shuts him down, asking if his head's just for decoration, or if he actually understands what being a regressor means. He explains clearly, it means he's completed a quest, and more than that, he's already slain 66,000 high-class pieces of shit. Gyuryu weakens a little, and Namgung has only 2 things to tell him. First, before the Hell Gate opens, Gyuryu's representative race won't be allowed to kill any humans. It's going to be a rule. Second, the reason he came here was to meet Gyuryu for his bundle. He warns him not to even think about trying to kill him once the gate opens. Gyuryu is stunned that Namgung knows his real name. He demands to know how he found that out. Namgung says they have quite a connection, but Gyuryu instantly disagrees, asking if Namgung is trying to say he used to be his servant or something. Namgung inspects the details of a sturdy steel shield, shocked by how insanely expensive it is. Right now, he's only earning 1 head per monster, so there's no way he can afford it. But later on, he knows 1,000,000 heads will be pocket change to him. Gyuryu notices how closely he's looking at it and taunts him, pointing out that he doesn't even have a real way to gather heads yet. He figures Namgung is just dreaming if he thinks he can buy anything. Namgung straight up tells him to hand it over, but Gyuryu thinks he's gone insane. How could he possibly give it to him? He tells Namgung to read what it says. It mentions friendliness. Gyuryu reminds him that he literally slapped his face and stabbed a sword into his arm. So why the hell would he give it to him now? Namgung, unfazed, pulls the knife out of his own hand and casually hands over 20 million. He also tells Gyuryu that if he does well, he'll give him 80 million more, because he thinks Gyuryu is the Yaksha at this moment. Gyuryu scoffs and throws the money away, telling Namgung that in 3 days, that paper won't be worth anything. But Namgung is confident. He insists Gyuryu's going to need it, and 2 years from now, that very money is going to save his life during the pitch-black night. Gyuryu might not know what that is, but Namgung knows exactly what will become valuable and what won't. And obviously, money is always going to be valuable, even after the Hell Gate opens. Gyuryu wonders if he's really being serious. Sure, in the realm of humans, money matters. But to them, it's just paper. Still, he asks Namgung, what if he's lying? Namgung doesn't bother explaining. He tells Gyuryu it's his choice, believe him or not. But 2 years from now, he'll be on the ground, wishing he had said yes when he had the chance. It's up to him, whatever he chooses. To Gyuryu, Namgung now seems even more twisted than those Naga bastards. He asks him what he's planning to do with all that. Namgung says he's going to record things. It'll be his entry ticket into the prophet's trial. Gyuryu's had enough. He turns and walks away, saying he just hopes Namgung knows what he's doing. Once Gyuryu's gone, Namgung decides it's time. He's going to meet the phases. Namgung heads out to meet the phases, with Gyuryu clearly frightened, trailing behind him. Gyuryu keeps glancing around nervously, his body trembling. Namgung senses the presence behind him, slowly turns his neck, and spots Gyuryu following him. Namgung asks why he's tagging along. Gyuryu, voice shaking though trying to sound casual, tells Namgung to mind his own business. He's just here to see what kind of death Namgung ends up with. Then, he asks if he can ask one thing. Namgung agrees, so Gyuryu says, hypothetically speaking, let's say everything makes sense. The reason Namgung knows about the prophet's test and the rune language is because of the memories from his past life, and right now, he's trying to steal the prophet's privilege. He then asks what Namgung plans to do about the prophet. After all, the one who should be here is the prophet, and Namgung must know who that is. So doesn't he feel even a little bad about taking that role from the rightful one? The prophet is Ghost Whale, also known as Choi Hwesu. He's a one-of-a-kind entity, one of the 8 martial stars, controlling countless undead monsters and nearly immortal. He stood on equal footing with the strongest of the 8, Alec. But to the world, he was just another piece of filth they needed to kill, a psychopath. Using undead monsters requires corpses, and to get high-quality ones, Choi Hwesu experimented on living humans. He even did it to Namgung. Namgung doesn't share any of that with Gyuryu, though. He simply says he doesn't feel sorry, not even a bit. Gyuryu almost calls him cold-blooded, but instead tells him that no matter how great he was in a past life, right now, he's just an ordinary human. He'd better be careful, if only he knew whose doors he's walking into. Namgung stays silent. Of course he knows. The one who tormented him for 18 long years, an unwelcome visitor. They continue walking until they enter the territory of the Tamer of the 7 Snakes. The phases question Gyuryu, asking why he brought a human here. Gyuryu can't respond. Fear has him frozen. The phases then address Namgung, stating that only the prophet is allowed in this place, and that Namgung is not the prophet they chose. Namgung looks straight at them with confidence and a smirk, replying that not choosing him was their greatest mistake. They should have picked him from the start. Suddenly, Gyuryu shouts from behind, calling out the Tamer of the 7 Snakes. He points to Namgung, saying this man is the Regressor, the one who killed 666,666 high-class demons. The phases acknowledge that he's the one who flipped the game board on its head, but still say he's not qualified to be the prophet. Namgung asks why not. Why don't they take a look for themselves and see if he's not better than that Choi Hwesu guy they chose? The phases peer into his life and witness it. The moment his daughter was falling off a cliff, and even with a broken arm, Namgung did everything he could to save her. He begged God to take him instead. But in the end, his hand was torn from his arm, and she fell, her small wrist still clutched by his severed hand. Then, an unknown hand, perhaps that of his dead wife, Suwa, mended the 2 hands together again. The phases chuckle, amused that the regressor who tilted the timeline turns out to be one of their own followers. That offhand comment triggers something in Namgung. He jumps into the air, eyes blazing, and shouts at the phases to think before they speak. He pulls out a dagger and slices into the red blob pulsing on the ceiling, where the phases reside. Gyuryu watches, stunned. Namgung lands, rage burning in his eyes, and declares that he is no follower of theirs. From the gash he just made, a heavy gas seeps out, forcing Namgung to hold his breath. The phases express surprise, wondering how he came to possess such power. Just as Namgung thought, even higher beings don't know everything. He gets back up and answers that this power proves his regression, and who knows, maybe it's a reward for surviving the hell he went through. Then, someone else appears. With a snap of his fingers, a field of purple mana flares to life. The voice asks once more where Namgung got that power. Namgung steps forward, answering that it was passed on to him by none other than Choi Hwesu, the prophet the phases had chosen. White-skinned snakes slither across the floor as the new figure finds Namgung's answer interesting. A throne rises high into the air, held up by a mass of rocks, and on it sits a man flanked by 3 white-skinned snakes. He acknowledges the regressor, calling him his loyal slave, and grants him the chance to speak, saying Namgung has earned the right to do so. The man, the true owner of the 7 snakes, recognizes him. There was someone like him who killed 66,000 demons. He glances at a painting and remarks that the one who made it must have been the observer of the sun and moon. though to him, that was a worthless accomplishment. He says he's impressed that Namgung managed to overcome everything and come to him personally. But still, it's unfortunate. He's already chosen a prophet and his choices are final. Namgung challenges that, asking if he really believes his decisions are absolute. The man demands to know why he thinks otherwise. Namgung explains that the requirements for regression are simple. It means he was the only one who survived. Not the chosen one, not even one of the others. He alone survived. He tells the man he didn't come to beg for the prophet's position. He's here to offer a chance. If the man doesn't choose him, that's fine. He'll just bring victory to another high being. And the prophets this one picks? They'll be the first ones Namgung kills. Gyu Ryu, horrified at how far this is escalating, begs Namgung to calm down. But the man's temper flares. He demands to know if Namgung is threatening him. Does he not realize he could crush him right here? He warns Namgung that if he keeps this up, he'll be the common enemy of all high beings. And that would mean an even worse starting point. So why should he choose him? Namgung calmly responds, that's how the man can win this cursed game. He also points out that the high beings can't actually mark him as an enemy, not by the rules. Even when he knew nothing, when the gates of hell opened, he survived, and he'll survive again. The man grins at that. With a wave of his hand, he summons another person, a man with headphones who crashes to the ground, screaming in pain. The man looks around, disoriented, and asks where he is. The higher being calls his name Choi Hwesu. He looks up, confused, then is crushed to death by the higher being's power. Namgung gulps at the sight of blood splattering everywhere. Then, the higher being makes his announcement. He's changing his prophet. The tamer of the seven snakes officially acknowledges Namgung. From that moment, Namgung becomes his prophet, and the prophet's privilege begins warping into the snake's storage. The tamer of the seven snakes leads Namgung to the snake treasure house, which is guarded by the triad poison doors. He tells Namgung to take anything he wants from the copper door, since that's the only one he can open. After all, prophets have to lead the people when the carnival begins. When Namgung asks if this hell they're going through is some kind of festival for you guys, the tamer discourages him from using that term, and instead tells him his name, Jor. Namgung repeats the name to himself before thinking that this is just the beginning, and he'll use everything he can. The copper door opens. Gyuryu, still following behind, has his knees tremble just from the sight of it. He's shocked that the two of them are casually yapping away like it's no big deal. As the two of them step inside, the door closes behind them. Gyuryu sighs and decides to sit outside until it opens again. Then Namgung calls out his name, telling him, "Let's go." After they teleport to the real world, Gyuryu asks if he can ask what happened inside the room. Namgung, while focusing on something, says he got an item and shows it to him. The item is the Monarch Leoric's headpiece, the first of the legendary level gear, and it belonged to the most arrogant king in history. It grants immense strength, but the user must pay for their arrogant sins. If a living person uses it, it drains their life force. But when worn by the dead, it grants terrifying power. Gyuryu looks stunned as he stares at the item. He had been wondering what kind of gear Namgung would pick, but this is completely useless to someone alive, so he's not sure why Namgung chose it. Still, when he sees Namgung waiting for his reaction, he forces a smile and says, "As expected, you have great taste." Namgung then asks to see Gyuryu's pouch. Gyuryu hesitantly brings up the subject of heads. Namgung shows him the pouch, revealing that he has 100,000 heads. Gyuryu is stunned and asks if he got them from the master of the snakes. Namgung confirms that Jor gave them to him. Gyuryu can't believe it. He tells Namgung that whenever they give someone something, it usually comes with a terrifying price, even the most trivial things. Namgung says he already knows. When Gyuryu asks what he paid for 100,000 heads, Namgung surprises him by saying he didn't pay anything. They paid him. Namgung explains that Jor was concerned he might be targeted by other prophets since he's a regressor. So instead, Jor gave him the 100,000 heads, and in return, assigned him a quest, Jor's condition, a task equivalent to the act of regressing, killing 666 demons. Namgung then takes out the red wax which contains the legend grade quest, and as he starts reading it, a hidden quest is also added, 7 serpents incarnations. Gyuryu just stands there, overwhelmed, wondering what in the world Namgung received. But Namgung snaps him out of it, asking again for the pouch. Startled, Gyuryu hurriedly takes out his pouch and asks what Namgung is looking for. Namgung says he needs a usable sword, at least rare grade, something he can buy with the heads he now has. After searching through the pouch, Gyuryu tells him he's got 2 options. Namgung looks at one of them, reads the description, and immediately rejects it, saying the story's too long. Nothing ever good comes out of gear with long stories. It always means there's a curse attached. Gyuryu agrees, saying that's exactly why it's so cheap. Namgung chooses the other sword instead and tells Gyuryu he'll also be buying a bag with the remaining heads. Gyuryu hands him the bag and asks if he's really going to just take it like that. He explains that getting rid of objects with heavy history is always a headache anyway, And besides, being friends with Namgung is worth way more than some puny bag. Namgung stays quiet at Gyuryu's cheesy line and instead asks what time it is as they walk toward the exit. When Gyuryu tells him it's 3 o'clock, Namgung asks why the place is so deserted. Gyuryu explains that this side is covered by a barrier. As they descend the final staircase, Namgung thanks Gyuryu for his help, saying it's a relief he won't be late thanks to him. But now, Gyuryu has turned back into his human form, and with a hint of suspicion, asks if Namgung is planning to do something again. He knew it. The moment Namgung picked up that sword, he could tell he was up to something. He wonders if Namgung's going to hunt prophets, or if he's got something even worse in mind. But before Gyuryu can spiral into darker thoughts, Namgung turns to him with a bright smile and says he's going to pick up his daughter. Gyuryu blinks, completely caught off guard. He'd been imagining something serious and terrifying, only for Namgung to casually say he's heading to school pickup because it's ending now. For the 2 days leading up to the Hellgate's opening, Namgung spends time with his daughter and has fun. It's just a brief blip of normalcy in a life filled with chaos. On the day the Hellgate is set to open, his daughter Salman asks if today's the day, the one he talked about. When Namgung confirms it, she shows him the survival supplies she's packed in her backpack. She proudly says she bought everything with her allowance. As she straps the bag on, they walk outside. Namgung asks if she really believed what he told her. She smiles brightly and says, of course, because she's always on her dad's side. The two of them hold hands and make their way to Daejeon National Cemetery. At the cemetery, a man named Myung-hoon salutes Namgung. Namgung puts a hand on his shoulder, surprised by the gesture, and reminds him it's been a while since they were discharged. Myung-hoon laughs and says it has been a long time, adding that Namgung still seems like he could jump right back in tomorrow. Namgung tells him not to be ridiculous. Myung-hoon then asks about Salman. Namgung explains that she's sleeping in the car. Myung-hoon nods, realizing the long trip from Seoul must have worn her out. He apologizes for not coming to them instead, but Namgung tells him not to worry. He let her sleep on purpose, because what's coming today won't be a pretty sight. When Myung-hoon jokingly asks if he's referring to Namgung's face, Namgung replies, more seriously this time, that there's a reason he asked to meet here instead of in Seoul. After a pause, Namgung tells Myung-hoon there's something he needs to say, and asks if he would believe him if he said the world was about to end. Myung-hoon nearly chokes on his drink, laughing as he spits it out, thinking Namgung must be joking. He asks if they're at least going to have a little fun today. But Namgung, staring down at his cup of water, answers with a firm expression that he wishes he was joking. Myung-hoon stares at him, speechless, until the ground suddenly trembles and people around them start panicking. Green clouds begin to fill the sky. Myung-hoon jumps up, confused like everyone else. But Namgung doesn't move. He remains seated on the bench. Trying to pull him up, Myung-hoon tells him they need to get out of there, fast. But before he can even finish the sentence, he freezes. Namgung rises, summoning his sword, his body glowing with red energy. Myung-hoon stumbles back, both terrified and stunned, as Namgung says with cold fury that he will kill each and every one of them. Myung-hoon alerts them that they have to run away as quickly as they can, but Namgung wants to go jump in the fight, no matter how much he stops him. Myung-hoon turns to Hyugnim, wondering what's cooking in his mind. But Namgung looks back at him, and he loudly affirms by saying, "Yes, sir," and runs off. Meanwhile, the goblins are attacking and everyone is running for their lives. Namgung walks and slays a goblin, killing it. He looks at the top of the sky and sees an eye. He goes into a flashback where he was advised to be selfish if he is in a life or death situation with someone, because whatever he does, he will always be called a hypocrite. Raising his sword, he asks for its companionship and helps one more time, and the sword glows. All the spirits began to enter his sword, as all the friendly spirits started to resonate with him. It shows up on the panel that the soul summoned has exceeded his capability level. On the other hand, Myung-hoon is tense, as he sees there's no end to the goblins and looks at Soman, who is sleeping like there's no tomorrow. Suddenly, he sees a whole clan of goblins emerging, with one of them attacking him. But his attack is dodged by Namgung. He promises to explain in detail later and hands him the sword and tells him to handle things on his end. His mind rushes with the thoughts that he promised his master to never use a sword again. But it's a matter of fight and flight. Myung-hoon takes the sword and wonders what's the name of it. Meanwhile, people panic, wondering why the help isn't showing up. A mother cries as her son is locked inside and she is being pulled away to be saved. But Myung-hoon shows up at time, and the goblin is killed in a swift by Myung-hoon. Namgung knows his power can't be displayed in the open. Hence, he entrusts his power to the people. In his old life, Myung-hoon was the leader of the armed Guardians clan, so Namgung decides to lead from the shadows. Meanwhile, Myung-hoon is killing and hunting down all the goblins, smashing their heads, and after slaying the goblins, he decides to take a bit of rest. Namgung walks to him, and suddenly, another huge goblin warrior is up to attack. With the arrival of the Goblin Warrior, Myung-hoon's rest goes straight down the drain. The massive Goblin Warrior swings its blade swiftly through the air, forcing Myung-hoon back onto his feet in a hurry. As the blade closes in, he raises his sword to protect himself. But the Goblin Warrior's strength is nothing short of overwhelming. Myung-hoon can't stop the attack and ends up getting thrown backward, completely off balance. He crashes hard onto the ground, his back slamming against the concrete road, landing right near Namgung, who's carrying Soman on his back. The Goblin Warrior, satisfied with the state it's left Myung-hoon in, turns its back on him and walks away. Namgung glances down at Myung-hoon and tries to lift his spirits, noting that it doesn't look like he's broken any bones from the fall and assuring him that he'll be fine. Still stunned by what just happened, Myung-hoon doesn't respond to the reassurance. Instead, he blurts out, asking what kind of monster that Goblin Warrior is to toss him aside like a trash can. He adds with frustration, "Why did it even stop and walk away like that?" Namgung answers, saying he believes it's headed for the shrine, a word that only confuses Myung-hoon more. To clear it up, Namgung explains that the shrine is a place built to offer crops to the Goblin Lord. He goes on to say the goblins are planning to turn the memorial tower into their base. So, unless they act fast and stop the goblins, their numbers will grow rapidly. Still exhausted from fighting the goblins, Myung-hoon stays down on the ground. He glares toward the direction the Goblin Warrior went and spits out a curse, furious about what the goblins plan to do to the memorial tower. Suddenly, a thought hits him, and he abruptly sits up, turning to Namgung and asking how he even knows all this. Namgung replies casually, saying it's his second time, so he already knows how everything unfolds. That just confuses Myung-hoon even more. He scratches his head and asks Namgung what exactly he means by second time. When Namgung answers with a simple, "life," Myung-hoon slaps his forehead in realization and lets out a shout, saying, of course, it's just what he expected from him. He jokes that it must all be boring to Namgung, having been through it once before, and then declares that they should just end all this quickly. Seeing him so fired up to just take down the Goblin Warrior and be done with it, Namgung tells him to slow down and sets the record straight. This doesn't end with just killing that lunatic. To truly stop the Goblin plan, they'll have to kill the world boss, the Goblin Lord itself. After making their way to where the Goblin Lord is, they look through a giant hole in the wall. Myung-hoon peers through and observes that the Goblin Lord doesn't look like it could take a single punch compared to the warriors. Namgung explains that it uses magic, and that there's a reason the warriors follow it. Worried about Soman, Myung-hoon turns to Namgung, who is gently laying her down on the floor. Myung-hoon asks if she'll be alright in a situation like this. Namgung reassures him, saying he put her to sleep for moments like these, and there's no need to worry. This time, he plans to summon the spirit soldiers. Before Myung-hoon even has a chance to ask what he means by spirits, Namgung has already summoned Gyuryu. With a dark, knowing look, he tells Myung-hoon that their next move is to wipe out the Goblin Warriors first, and that there are still plenty of things ahead that'll surprise him, so he better be ready. They move forward, and the moment the Goblin Warrior senses them, it turns around. But before it can react, Namgung charges ahead, throwing his sword with perfect aim. It pierces the Goblin Lord's eye, making it scream out in agony. Namgung doesn't pause. He rushes straight toward the Goblin Warrior. Despite the pain, the Goblin Warrior yanks the sword out of its eye and swings it at Namgung as he approaches. With sharp reflexes, Namgung dodges the attack and pulls out 2 poison darts, stabbing them into the Goblin Warrior's leg. The creature groans in pain, overwhelmed. Seeing his chance, Namgung shouts to Myung-hoon, "Now's the moment." Myung-hoon, who's been waiting for the signal, leaps high into the air with his sword, aiming to bring it down with full force. But when he strikes, nothing happens. The sword doesn't pierce. Shocked, Myung-hoon yells in frustration, wondering why the blade won't sink in. The Goblin Warrior roars in fury, and Myung-hoon lands back on the ground in a panic, questioning whether it's literally flexing its muscles to harden its body. Getting behind Namgung, he grumbles that it's a shame since those poison darts were amazing. He casually asks where Namgung even got them from. Namgung answers calmly. They came from the Ulji Street underground plaza. Distracted by the mention of Ulji Street, Myung-hoon suddenly blurts out that it's Seoul's hotspot and says he wanted to buy an automatic nose hair pincher there, so he might as well drop by and grab one. Dragging him back to reality, Namgung reminds Myung-hoon that they've got to finish off the Goblin Warrior before the Goblin Lord interferes. He announces that it's time to wrap this up. Namgung steps up again with the poison darts, launching an attack against the Goblin Warrior while it swings its sword in defense. He dodges with ease and hurls the darts straight into its chest. The Goblin Warrior howls in pain, staggering and finally collapsing to the ground. Myung-hoon sees his opportunity, shouting that he won't fail this time and rushes in. Though the Goblin Warrior struggles to fight back, Myung-hoon manages to overpower it and finally finishes it off. Rotating his shoulder, Myung-hoon complains that its bones were so hard his arms are sore, but proudly says he still took it down with his biceps. Namgung warns him not to lower his guard, reminding him they're headed for the Goblin Lord next. They step inside the place where the Goblin Lord should be, but it's nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, something starts to glow behind Ma Young-hoon. Sensing danger, Namgung urgently yells his name, trying to warn him. But Ma Young-hoon, still wearing a grin of triumph from defeating the goblin warrior, cluelessly asks Namgung what he's saying, unaware of what's about to strike. Namgung realizes it's already too late for Ma Young-hoon to react or defend himself. Without hesitation, he unleashes the spirit soldier, Gyuryu. Gyuryu instantly moves to shield Ma Young-hoon, getting between him and the goblin lord, who had just launched an attack. Ma Young-hoon is completely taken aback by the sudden movement before his eyes. He hadn't even realized what was about to happen. Meanwhile, Namgung clutches his chest, troubled by the strain, wondering if it's because the spirit soldiers have such a limited growth scope. As he feared, it seems Gyuryu may not last much longer. As Ma Young-hoon finally wraps his head around the situation, rage builds up inside him. He charges at the goblin lord, sword raised, shouting curses. By this point, 2 of Namgung's 3 summoned spirit soldiers have already been used. Ma Young-hoon swings his sword with force, but just before it can land, it's blocked by some invisible energy, and the goblin lord effortlessly hurls him back using its powers from a distance. Groaning in pain, Ma Young-hoon hits the ground once again, this time at the hands of the goblin lord. Looking at his confused face, Namgung explains that the attack was stopped by a shield, not an advanced spell, but still rare at this stage. Not knowing what to do, Ma Young-hoon looks up at Namgung from the ground and asks him what the solution is. Namgung, keeping his eyes locked on the goblin lord, tells him to just crush it. He just needs to use more strength. Still shaken from how easily he was repelled, Myung-hoon insists there's no way they can break through that right now. His disbelief is clear, even as he struggles to get back on his feet. Namgung calmly reassures him that there's no way there isn't a way to finish off the goblin lord. Then, without hesitation, he hands over his own sword and tells Myung-hoon to leave it to the blade. Ma Young-hoon takes the sword from Namgung, staring at it with a clueless expression. He says he doesn't get what Namgung means. To drive it home, Namgung explains that it's a cursed object, a sword bound with a soul. Then, placing a firm hand on Myung-hoon's shoulder, he gives a final instruction. Don't let go of that sword no matter what. The moment Ma Young-hoon takes Namgung's sword, it triggers Eye of the Soul Love. And the Goblin Lord begins to see Ma Young-hoon differently. Its entire focus shifts to him, and it summons the Goblin warriors to attack. Completely unaware of the shift, Ma Young-hoon stands with his back turned to the Goblin Lord, and to the warriors now charging straight at him. Namgung, acting swiftly, discreetly pulls out the Demon Hunter's silver blade and flings it at the goblins sprinting their way. By connecting to the soul of the executioner bound to the blade, Namgung speaks to Ma Young-hoon through their shared link. He tells him mentally that he can't buy any more time. It's now Ma Young-hoon's turn to act. The executioner's spirit inside Ma Young-hoon awakens, thirsty for blood. With a feral roar, he whips around to face the oncoming goblin army. Charging straight at them, he stomps with such force that the ground beneath his feet cracks apart. Then he launches himself straight at the goblin lord. The strength he now possesses, fueled by the cursed sword, is overwhelming. He hits the shield with such power that it cracks. With the same intense, menacing expression, Ma Young-hoon presses forward, driving the sword through the broken shield. It pierces clean through the goblin lord's body, ending the battle in a single, devastating blow. Namgung, still on the ground below, watches silently as he looks up at the eye-shaped rift in the sky. Gyuryu, meanwhile, continues hunting down the remaining goblins. Once the goblin lord is eliminated, a system-wide reward triggers. Every participant within a certain range, based on their contribution, receives a reward, and chests begin to appear in front of Namgung. Ma Young-hoon, back to his normal self, stands next to the goblin lord's lifeless body, the sword still stuck in its back. He's visibly confused, completely unaware of what just happened. He looks at Namgung and asks what all this is, what just happened, and why these chests are appearing. Hands in his pockets, Namgung casually answers that Myung-hoon defeated the goblin lord, and now it's time to claim his loot. Together, they begin inspecting the chests. Since Ma Young-hoon delivered the final blow, most of the loot is rightfully his. Inside, they find rare belongings of the goblin lord, items like its ornament and bracelet. Ma Young-hoon, clearly thrilled, puts the bracelet on and admires how it looks. Smiling, he asks Namgung if he should just give it to him. But seeing how excited Ma Young-hoon is about the bracelet he's already wearing, Namgung declines, saying it'll be more useful to him anyway. Suddenly, something green gleams from one of the chests. Curious, Namgung leans down and opens it, and to their surprise, the chest contains the goblin lord's heart, a rare and valuable item. Ma Young-hoon's jaw drops in amazement, and he quickly remarks how amazing that reward is. But Namgung tells him that it's not actually that useful for people like them, those without natural magical talent. As he tucks it into his pocket, Namgung silently thinks to himself that when the next Hellgate opens, they'll try to find someone to exchange it with. It should fetch a high price then. Unfortunately, every time Namgung tries to trade or sell it, the attempts are rejected, until he notices a feature labeled Recommended Subject. Surprised, he wonders when such a feature was even introduced. It makes sense though. He was too busy hunting demons in his past life to notice these smaller details, especially with his only goal being to meet Soman. But then, something strange happens. As he examines the Goblin Lord's heart, he starts to think, neither he nor Myung-hoon have talent for magic. So why does this item persist? Suddenly, the system confirms a suitable target. After evaluating the heart's potential match, it begins to glow with a bright teal light. The glow moves from Namgung's hand, which is still holding the heart, over to Soman, who is still peacefully sleeping nearby. Namgung stands frozen, stunned at what just happened. The magic growth potential has been confirmed, in her, and then it's displayed clearly before him. Her classification is legend grade, and it's the highest rank possible. When he walks over to his daughter, who's lying asleep on the ground, he wonders to himself who could have known Soman would have a magical disposition. Then again, it's only natural he didn't know. He lost Soman after the Hell Gate opened. Still holding the Goblin Lord's heart floating above his palm, Namgung looks at it and acknowledges inwardly that this isn't just about having the disposition. After all, she's not only of legendary grade, but her potential for growth is also at the best stage, something even Namgung had never seen in his past life. When he's finally able to speak after pushing through the shock that washed over him, he admits how amazing this all is. But at the same time, a dark question creeps into his mind. Does this mean Soman is destined to have blood on her hands? Myung-hoon, seeing Namgung so weighed down by worry, asks if Namgung wants to leave Soman's magic unawakened. He admits, honestly, it's hard even for them as adults to face monsters, and with concern in his voice, he says he thinks kids should be able to live happier lives than the adults, even if the world itself becomes hell. Before Namgung can answer or even begin to decide what to do, Soman slowly opens her eyes. She rubs them groggily, then sits up, surprised to see her father and her uncle Myung-hoon standing in front of her. With a cheerful grin, Myung-hoon calls her name affectionately and exclaims at how much she's grown since the last time he saw her. He asks if she wants an airplane ride, but she gets up from the ground and tells him firmly that she's not a kid anymore. Looking around at the chaos, she starts asking what's going on, until her eyes land on the corpses of goblins scattered across the field and patches of fire still smoldering on the ground. Her eyes widen in shock and disbelief as she processes the situation, and she slowly turns back to her father. She asks if he wasn't the one who said they would get through this together, no matter what happened. Then she questions if that wasn't the reason he told her, "It's today." Caught off guard and embarrassed for lying, Namgung lowers his gaze and apologizes to her. But they don't get the chance to talk further because a little boy walks over to Soman. He tugs on her sleeve, and when she asks what's wrong, he silently points to his dead mother, a sharp weapon still pierced through her back. The boy tries to speak, but the words don't come. Only the sound of his wailing breaks through. Seeing Soman kneel and hug the boy from behind to comfort him, Myung-hoon says to Namgung that maybe, because she takes after her father, she's braver than she looks. But Namgung shakes his head and insists she probably takes after her mother. Squeezing his eyes shut, Namgung admits he's weak. He confesses to Myung-hoon that he tried to lock his daughter away, building walls around her because he was scared. Myung-hoon, trying to console his old friend, tells him that it's only natural. It's what any father would do. Then Soman turns to her father and suggests they take the little boy with them. But Namgung immediately refuses. He says there will be shelters during the Great War, and the boy will be safer there than coming along with them. Soman tries again, pointing out that the boy is all alone. But Namgung stands firm, repeating that no means no. Biting her lip and lowering her gaze, Soman fights back her tears. She quietly tells her father how terrifying it is to be left all alone, especially since she knows exactly how that feels. He wasn't by her side either when her mother went to heaven. Namgung stays silent, but just then, a portal opens behind him and Jor steps out of it. With a sly grin, Jor reminds Namgung of what he foretold. In a mocking tone, he asks whether it really makes sense for a man who handles death to be walking the path of life. Hearing Jor's voice, Namgung turns around and Soman follows his gaze. Jor, still wearing his twisted grin, praises Namgung for eliminating the Goblin Lord. According to the plan, the citadel should have been built before midnight, and goblins should have been swarming the city by now. But things, as he says, have gotten quite twisted. When Namgung demands to know what he's talking about, and argues that his active efforts should benefit Jor, Jor agrees, but says the narrow-minded higher-ups objected. They're against Namgung commanding the dead as soldiers before the carnival begins. Namgung scoffs and asks what's so wrong about using the tools he has. He tells Jor to pass along a message to the higher-ups. They should mind their own business. But Jor refuses, saying they're actually right. It should all begin with the carnival. When Namgung presses for a reason, Jor raises a finger toward him and says it's because Namgung isn't balanced. Can he really control patriotic souls? Can he truly wield the power of ancient gods and heroes? But Namgung doesn't answer. Instead, he tells Jor, angrily, that before he starts rambling about rules, he should think about protecting Namgung. Jor only laughs, saying he knew Namgung would respond like this. That's why he came with a compromise. A life for a life. He explains that Namgung has already absorbed several spirits, and now it's time to pay the price. Technically, the rule calls for an equivalent exchange, but since they're also at fault, they'll settle for just one life. He points at the little boy clinging to Somin and reminds Namgung that he was planning to leave him behind anyway, so why not kill him now rather than let him slow Namgung down later? Hearing that, Somin furiously yells at Jor, calling his words nonsense and punching him in the face. She calls him a reptile, and demands to know who he thinks he is to decide who should live or die. Jor, now enraged, uses his powers to fling Somin away. She crashes hard into a wall. That's the last straw for Namgung. He steps forward, but Jor throws him back as well. When Myung-hoon tries to stop him, he too is sent flying. Holding all three of them at a distance with his power, Jor sneers. He tells Namgung that while he may like him, if his daughter crosses the line, she needs to be taught a lesson. Namgung struggles against the force pinning him down, while Jor smirks and asks whether they should settle this by taking the boy's life, or Somin's or Myung-hoon's. Namgung shouts curses at Jor, but Jor simply tells him to shut up and choose. Just then, the Goblin Lord's heart slips from Namgung's hand and falls to the ground. Somin's body begins glowing with the same blue light as before. Jor looks at her and lets out a laugh, as though everything's going according to plan. Namgung realizes with horror that Jor had known about Somin's disposition from the very beginning, and orchestrated this entire situation to force her awakening. Blaming himself, Namgung squeezes his eyes shut and apologizes to Somin, saying he just wanted to protect her, to save her at least. But Somin tells him it's not his fault. She assures him that even in the future, she'll keep trusting him, because she knows he'd never make the wrong choice. Then, as a gentle soul brushes against her to soothe her spirit, her magic finally awakens. Her trait transforms into perception magic. With her newfound power, Somin shouts that the real one at fault is this crazy man Jor, and with that, she strikes him with her magic. As Somin lashes out with perception magic, cursing Jor, he grins at the sight of her immense power, but effortlessly cancels it with just a flick of his hand. He smirks, calling her cute and acknowledging that not only did she manage to use the highest tier of magic, but she pulled off a mythic-level spell. Having already broken free from his grasp, Somin stumbles slightly, while Jor releases Namgung as well, who drops to the ground with a thud. Glancing at Namgung, Jor comments on how it seems he's found someone even more interesting than himself. Namgung groans in pain, still processing the sudden release, as Somin once again tries to raise her magic. She yells at Jor not to move, but before she can finish her spell, dizziness overcomes her, and she collapses. Jor casually walks toward her, calmly explaining that perception magic consumes a huge amount of mana, and she's just a kid who's only just awakened her power, so it's only natural for her to be overwhelmed. Squatting next to her, he begins channeling healing magic. Namgung, gritting his teeth and holding his elbow, charges toward them, yelling for Jor not to touch his daughter. He doesn't care what Jor is, high being or not, he swears he'll kill him. Jor smirks, still healing Somin, and tells Namgung he's not doing anything harmful, he's simply helping her. Seeing that Jor is actually healing his daughter, Namgung slows down, the tension draining slightly from his posture. Once finished, Jor rises and tells Namgung that he ought to thank his daughter. Apparently other high beings were watching, and they took a liking to her, so for now, they'll overlook everything. Namgung stays silent, his expression heavy. He lifts Somin into his arms, holding her close with a quiet intensity. Jor warns him to keep in mind that from this point forward, he'll have more to protect than just against monsters. He'll also need to shield his daughter from high beings who now covet her. Noticing the grin on Jor's face, Namgung throws back at him that, as his contract god, Jor should do more than just watch with folded arms. Suddenly, a blood-red crystal ball hits the ground with a sharp clink. Jor tells him that this item wasn't supposed to appear until the Goblin Castle was completed. The high beings had planned to reward Namgung with it at the next carnival, but Jor confesses that he stole it from them. Flashing a cheeky smirk, he asks if he's not doing a pretty good job as Namgung's god by pulling strings like this. Jor then opens his portal again and steps toward it, telling Namgung that he'll keep watching and that Namgung must stay alive, if only for the winnings that lie ahead. Somin slowly regains consciousness, blinking her eyes open to find herself lying in the back seat of a car. As the memories rush back to her, she jerks upright in panic, asking Namgung and Myung-hoon what happened, saying she clearly remembers fighting Jor. Myung-hoon turns to reassure her that she passed out from mana overload, so it's not surprising if some things are hazy. With a sudden shift in tone, Somin urgently asks about the little boy. While still driving, Myung-hoon glances back and asks if she means Ho-sung. He tells her that Namgung already dropped the boy off at a shelter in Daejeon. She shoots up from her seat and grabs Namgung's hair in frustration, scolding him for not listening to her when she insisted they take the boy with them. Unbothered, Namgung simply tells her the Daejeon shelter is far safer than being on the road with them. Internally, Namgung thinks that the shelter run by Jin Soo-hyuk is the safest location in South Korea, thanks to the military. As Somin crosses her arms and sighs in defeat, he tells her about Jin Soo-hyuk, saying he knew him in a past life, and that he's someone trustworthy. So she doesn't need to worry about Hosung. Once she finally accepts his words, she asks where they're heading now. Namgung replies that they're going to Seoul. After the first Hellgate closed, a new one has opened there. If they want to stop an even bigger disaster, they'll need to get the dungeon's reward. Myung-hoon then turns to Namgung and asks if he's what they call a prophet, someone chosen by the higher beings. When Namgung confirms, Myung-hoon asks what their next move is. Still staring out the window, Namgung simply says that there's nothing to do but grow stronger. The radio crackles to life, broadcasting traffic alerts. Train services have been halted due to damaged tracks, and the Paju Expressway is closed following the destruction of the Seosan Junction. Myung-hoon sighs, saying it looks like the highway is no longer an option. Though he doesn't mind personally since he's strong enough to handle it, he points out they have Somin on board, so he suggests they use the national road instead. Before he can finish his sentence, something crashes onto the windshield, jolting them all. A monster had landed on the car. Shocked, Myung-hoon quickly checks on Somin, asking if she's okay. Namgung gets out to assess the situation and immediately spots more monsters that haven't been cleared out yet. As he stands there, a goblin charges at him from behind, but before it can reach him, an arrow flies past and kills it instantly. A young boy stands in front of Namgung, bow in hand. The arrow had narrowly missed Namgung. After the goblin falls, the boy hesitates and stammers an apology, saying the monsters were suddenly targeting Namgung. Namgung tells the boy to talk only after lowering his bow. The boy quickly complies, lowering his weapon and apologizing again. Namgung looks around at the scattered goblin corpses and asks if the boy was the one who killed them all. When the boy nods, Myung-hoon exits the car too, praising the boy's aim and remarking that it's impressive he hit their vital spots at midnight no less. Still, Namgung can't shake the feeling that something's off. The boy took out 5 goblins with a mere bow, no magic, no enhancements. That level of raw ability feels familiar. Perhaps he'd seen someone like this before in his past life. Driven by curiosity, Namgung asks the boy his name. The boy introduces himself as Jeon Gyeong-in. Myung-hoon asks how Gyeong-in ended up in this mess when everyone was told to stay indoors. Gyeong-in replies that his father is in a hospital in Seoul and he hasn't been able to reach him, so he has no choice but to head there. That answer hits Namgung hard. It makes sense now, why he never met this boy in his past life. With that kind of talent, if he'd lived, Namgung would have remembered. But if even someone like Somin had such a slim chance of survival, what hope would an ordinary citizen have? Namgung sighs and tells him to go back home. There's no way he'll survive the journey to Seoul on that bike. He'll just die halfway. But Gyeong-in bows deeply, pleading to go with them. He promises he'll repay them somehow. Namgung narrows his eyes and asks how he plans to repay them. Gyeong-in presents a crystal in his hand, saying he doesn't know exactly what it is, but it appeared when he killed the monsters. Myung-hoon picks up the crystal and snorts, saying they're not looking to raise some mysterious rock like it's a pet. Namgung runs up, stopping Myung-hoon and asking Gyeong-in if it really appeared right as the goblins were being killed. Myung-hoon jokes again about Namgung wanting to raise a stone, but Namgung doesn't laugh. He takes the crystal and stares at it, his face going pale. He mutters in horror that this shouldn't be appearing now. They take Gyeong-in into the car and continue their journey towards Seoul. On the Olympic Expressway, Namgung once again turns to Gyeong-in and asks if he's absolutely sure he's not lying. Gyeong-in, already intimidated by the group, stammers a little before confirming that the crystal really did come from a goblin. Namgung continues staring at the purple crystal in his hand, examining it closely, before finally saying its name, an agility rune. It's the lowest grade rune, one that gives a small boost to the agility stat. There are 2 kinds of strength a person can gain during the carnival, nature and stats. Natures are innate talents, something people are born with. Stats, on the other hand, are powers anyone can build up by raising them over time. Runes are unique items that enhance these stats. Naturally, runes are incredibly sought after, but the chances of getting one from a monster? Practically 0. As he reflects on this, Namgung considers that while the odds are terrible, they're not impossible. So technically, it could have dropped from a goblin. Just as he's about to say more, Gyeong-in, clearly surprised, interrupts to ask if the crystal is really that rare. But instead of answering, a sudden thought shoots through Namgung's mind. What if the rune's appearance wasn't luck at all? The idea seems too absurd to accept, but it hits hard enough that Namgung immediately turns and asks Gyeong-in, who's sitting in the backseat beside Somin, where he learned archery. Gyeong-in replies that his father taught him. He used to be a national archery representative before becoming bedridden from an accident. Myung-hoon, surprised, blurts out at the mention of a national athlete and wonders aloud if the surname John means he's from that national archery team. Gyeong-in confirms it by saying his father's name is John Taeho. Bingo! That seals it. Namgung instantly connects the dots and realizes Gyeong-in is indeed the son of John Taeho, just like he suspected. In his previous life, John Taeho was a rune master, someone with a nature so rare it was only shared by one other person, Anna Leon. Every major clan across the globe had tried to recruit him, but after the accident left him comatose for 7 years, all eyes were on waking him up. Saintess Era, one of the 8 martial stars, had spent a fortune to use an elixir on him. Yet despite her saintly title, she committed dark deeds in secret, like killing John Taeho for refusing a clan's offer. But this time, Namgung is certain things will play out differently. Myung-hoon asks if they should go to the hospital now, but Namgung shakes his head. He says there's a stop they need to make first. Kyung-in, confused and frustrated, raises his voice, reminding Namgung of his promise to take him to his father. He insists that if they're late, something might happen to him. But Namgung calmly tells him that going there right now won't change anything. Given the goblin attacks, police, firefighters, and even the military have been deployed across Korea. In such times, the medical facilities are top priority. That means the hospital is probably one of the safest places to be right now. What they need to do instead is focus on gathering heads, since going there at this moment won't make any real difference. Still not fully understanding, Kyung-in presses him, asking what exactly Namgung means by all this. Namgung replies that they can save his father with an elixir. Kyung-in is stunned. He blurts out that an elixir costs 40,000 heads, and there's no way to gather that many in time. Trying to ease his mind, Myung-hoon grins and tells him he's in luck. They're on their way to a dungeon. Somin chimes in with a bright smile, casually telling Kyung-in that her dad, Namgung, is living a second life, which is how he knows so much. Kyung-in, puzzled, questions the second life bit, but Somin just ignores it and tells him if he joins them, he's bound to earn big rewards. After a moment of thinking it over, Kyung-in hesitantly asks, okay, even if they manage to collect enough heads, where would they even buy the elixir from? Namgung doesn't answer directly. He just says Kyung-in will find out soon enough. Just then, a massive flash of light slams down from the sky, crushing cars in the distance. Everyone on the road stares in shock. Screams break out, people panic. Namgung, however, stays calm, eyes fixed on the destruction ahead. With a firm expression, he simply mutters, right on cue. From the spot where the light struck, a strange creature appears, a yaksha. It has a powerful, muscular body like a human, but its head is anything but. It climbs on top of a wrecked car. People trapped in the traffic can't make sense of what they're seeing until the creature opens its mouth and starts to speak. It laughs mockingly, telling everyone to listen carefully, as it'll keep things short. The yaksha bares its sharp teeth and claims that from now on, the phases will give the carnival's audience a chance to awaken. The crowd isn't in the right mind to grasp any of what it's saying. Some shout for others to run, others yell at the yaksha to get out of the way. Angered, yaksha lets out a monstrous roar that incinerates the cars in front of it and even scorches the road itself. Wiping its mouth, it scolds the crowd in a menacing tone, asking if they don't know how to pay attention when someone is talking. It then says all necessary information will be implanted in their minds automatically. No need for long explanations. Still, for formality's sake, it'll make an announcement. By now, most people are out of their vehicles, paralyzed with horror and confusion, as Yaksha begins to explain the festival rules. But then, Myung-hoon leans on the horn of their car, blasting it loudly to get Yaksha's attention, irritating it. The creature roars back, demanding to know what lunatic is honking like that. Namgung steps out of the car, yelling, "Me!" and throws in a curse for good measure. When Yaksha lays eyes on Namgung, its entire demeanor changes. It mutters Namgung's name under its breath, hesitating. Namgung grins and mocks the sudden change in tone, noting how Yaksha's words have gotten much shorter now. Myung-hoon also steps out and asks if this is the same monster Namgung was talking about. He then adds that it definitely looks stronger than a goblin. Enraged at being compared to a goblin, Yaksha steps off the wrecked car and begins walking toward them, furious. It calls Myung-hoon an ill-mannered human and stops right beside Namgung, placing a hand on his shoulder. But the moment it does, its whole attitude shifts. Like a frightened cat, Yaksha lowers its voice and whispers into Namgung's ear, begging to know how he found out it would be here. It then pleads for him to go easy, reminding him that there are lots of witnesses around. Before Yaksha can keep begging, Namgung cuts to the point. He tells it to hand over everything, from its bundle to its heart pouch. The demand clearly makes Yaksha nervous. It protests, saying they haven't even formed a contract yet, and Namgung is already asking for its heart pouch. In response, Namgung leans in and whispers if it would prefer handing over an elixir instead. Yaksha tries to argue, saying an elixir is worth 400,000 heads, and Namgung doesn't even come close to having that. But Namgung gives it a pointed look, commenting that it seems the Iljiro scars on Yaksha's body have healed nicely. With a trembling voice, Yaksha says that what's impossible is impossible. It adds that breaking the regulations as a proxy would get it into serious trouble. While the two continue their conversation, Kyung-in turns to Myung-hoon and asks what on earth Namgung is talking about with a monster like that. Ma Young-hoon just shrugs and says that it is Namgung's second life after all, adding that no matter how strange things seem, Gyung-in shouldn't overthink it. Eventually, the discussion ends, and Namgung returns to the group holding a pouch, while Yaksha makes its way back to the crowd to deliver the announcement. Soman immediately asks what Namgung was talking about with it for so long. He replies casually, saying he just spent his allowance to buy a few survival items they'll need inside the dungeon. Jeon Gyeong-in suddenly felt a group of dungeons, and all the explanations about the carnival flooded his mind. He tried to figure out what was going on. Hyung informs him that the Yaksha from earlier is implanting basic information about the carnival into people's heads, and he is doing this as soon as the carnival commencement is announced. Jeon Gyeong-in questions Hyung if that is possible in reality, as the second life or whatever it is it real? Ma Young-hoon questions Hyung if they should leave the car there, but he denies it and commands him to take the car with him. He seems shocked seeing that he can drive the car into the dungeon, but Hyung confesses to him that he is going to Sinchon, as the exit of the dungeon is over there, and wants him to meet him after they are done. Myung-hoon felt low as even the kids were fighting in the dungeon, but a grown-up like him is unable to do so. Hyung tells him that there is going to be an even bigger battle in Sinchon, which is the time of dusk. He felt thankful for the data they found, as at the Hellgate, a fixed number of monsters are going to appear, and even if they close the Hellgate earlier, there is going to be an event where the remaining monsters still pour out at once. That is called the time of dusk, but it seems impossible to Myung-hoon because he thinks that even if they close the Hell Gates early, they are going to face damage that is the same, and that is the reason Hyung wants him to go there and protect the people. Myung-hoon agrees and wants him to leave that all on him. Hyung tells him that there could even be countless casualties, but still it's an opportunity to earn a lot of heads. He also commands Myung-hoon to buy the elixir, as it is a great opportunity to win over the rune master Joan Taiho, and they are going to clear the dungeon as fast as possible and join Myung-hoon. He commands Jeon Gyeong-in and Somin to let go. As Somin and Jeon Gyeong-in start attacking the zombies, Somin complains to his dad that he should have told her earlier that the zombies could come out from the dungeon, as she would have brought her power bank, and it is even looking like the live action of Underworld which she saw on TikTok. Jeon Gyeong-in questions her. How could she be so calm meeting the zombies? Somin replies by saying that kids these days are not scared of zombies because they have played Underworld, and she also likes streaming that sometimes. Jeon Gyeong-in confirms if she is talking about the popular game, as he is not really good at playing games. Somin has a talent for it that she can only think of one that is better than her, an athlete called Flame, and she feels that a dungeon like that is so easy. Their Hyung wants her not to overdo it, as she can overload herself like the last time she did. Hyung questions Jeon Gyeong-in if he is trying to be a professional athlete like his father, as he has headshotted them all, but he denies it, as he just started blowing well when the goblin appeared, and it feels like the target is getting bigger. Hyung thinks he has awakened his archery skills, as he had expected his talent to be rune-related like athlete Jeon Taiho. Jeon Gyeong-in feels that something is changing, but he is going to tell him when he is sure of it. Somin sees the reward chest and goes to open it, but Hyung stops her, but she doesn't hear him because of the sound of the explosion, and according to his past memories, there is a trap in the dungeon. Hyung orders Jeon Gyeong-in to shoot that chest, and he did so. Hyung tells Somin that it is the dungeon's trap, and he is being thankful to Jeon Gyeong-in, as she is able to avoid hits, but if she had opened the chest, she would have died instantly. Somin thinks that it is a boomer, but Hyung corrects her that it is a prize which is a key to the boss room. They all went there, and Hyung tells them that in front of the door there is a ghoul's king. On the other hand, Myung-hoon experiences a lot of traffic and sees Hyung's car, so he can't leave it there. They get an announcement from the Central Control Office of the National Emergency Management Agency, and all the residents of Seoul are urged to evacuate to the nearest shelter. Myung-hoon gets confused seeing what is happening there as the time of dusk has come and they have entered the Ghoul King's tomb. Hyung informs them that they have got not just a Ghoul King in the room but 4 elite zombies as well, and unless they deal with those 4, the Ghoul King won't fall. Somin thinks that these elite zombies won't drop with a single hit, and according to Jeon Gyeong-in, if they collaborate, they can take them down one by one, but Hyung refuses, as the Ghoul King will revive them endlessly, and if they don't take out all 4 at once, they can't even scratch the Ghoul King. Somin questions him after if he has bought something from the Yaksha, as he once said he had used that in the dungeon. He agrees that it is the Paladin Raoul's pendant which has a rare highest grade, and with that they can slow down the zombies' resurrection, but preventing all 4 from returning simultaneously is a challenge. On the other hand, the first line of defense has collapsed and the second is also in danger, and they started contacting the air support if there is a chance of survival, as they have already checked on the heat detectors and there are no civilians at the summoning point. The army questions if the goblins from all over the country are being summoned there, and if they don't strike them immediately, they are going to spiral out of their control, and the damage is going to surpass that during the Hellgate's opening. At that point, even if they are sure that there are no survivors, the media will definitely find something to nitpick about and is going to make a fuss by accusing the military of city destruction. So one of them wants to be more mindful of public opinion, while the other one gets angry at him as he is willing to sacrifice them just to maintain appearances. In the meanwhile, they see a civilian vehicle coming there. They get panicked and try to get them out because of the situation, but suddenly one of them realizes that it's a lunatic. Hyung informs Somin and Jeong Gyung-in that the zombie is coming, but Jeong Gyung-in finds it crazy, as the body was already blown out. Then how could it be possible for it to reappear? As in his own case, he would have been to the hospital. Somehow they managed to kill that one and move to the other ones. The Ghoul King said something in another language which made Jeong Gyung-in shocked as he was sitting there all the time, and suddenly he was saying something in another language. Somin understands that he is saying to come back to life, and she is able to understand the words of the Ghoul Kings, which is Sua's influence, as if her mother's soul intervened in her awakening. It might explain her newfound non-elemental magic powers, and Hyung feels that this is a theory, as he has never witnessed anything like that before in his life. He commands Somin to keep telling them what the Ghoul King is saying. They keep fighting against the zombies, and Hyung realizes that with only one pendant, they are not going to be able to end them, and he has never attempted that in his past life, but wants to do that, and orders Somin to shoot her magic at the pendant in order to blow them all in one go. Somin thinks that she can't do that, but Hyung wants her to keep going, but unfortunately the mirror broke, and Somin feels that this is the end, but Hyung tells her that it's just the beginning. They kept fighting against them, and Hyung ordered Somin to do the same thing again, and then he himself went to fight against the Ghoul King, but he stabbed him in his chest. On the other hand, Hojin realizes that it is Myung-hoon who came in the car. He questions why he is there, so Myung-hoon claims that he is the real hero who appears when the world needs him, and he also tells them that sooner or later the boss, Nam-gung, is going to arrive, and until then, they have to hold his position, but they don't have any weapon left for Myung-hoon to use, as he also didn't need that because he came prepared and had something remarkable with him, which was a sword from thin air. Hojin questions him if he is planning to take on those monsters that are practically bulletproof with a sword. Myung-hoon wants him to be aware of the Hellgates and Yaksha and that the guns are no longer considered weapons, as these are the real weapons. He takes out the Ogre Tonfa, which is made from ogre bones, which he has excelled in handling within their platoon, and it is even costly, but Myung-hoon has purchased that with all the rewards he had. Somin gets worried about his dad, but Jeong Gyung-in stops her, and he knows that he can handle that situation himself. Nam-gung tries to figure out if Jeong Gyung-in has shot it and realizes that the chest is the weak point and not the head. Gyung-in orders Somin to restrain its movements. She seems confused by seeing a sudden change in his behavior. Nam-gung is still trying to figure out why Jeong Gyung-in is targeting the shoulders and not the head. As with his skills, it would have been an accurate shot. He commands Somin to do the same thing but avoid damaging the head. Somin gets shocked by seeing that if she deflected her magic, Gyung-in would manage to kill him. Nam-gung questions Jeong Gyung-in that killing it with regular arrows didn't even use much of the pendant. Then how did he do so? Jeong Gyung-in explains to him that there are parts of their bodies that shine, and aiming at them subsequently and killing them will drop those runes, but not every one of them shines. That is why he didn't want to tell Nam-gung until he was sure, which he calls an opening, and he believes it 100% if it shines. Somin asks his dad if he is alright. Nam-gung realizes that killing the Ghoul King without the pendant may involve more than just a rune drop. And is it the being with the shining runes, or is it a matter of odds? He thinks that if that is the latter, then he can obtain a bunch of runes by combining the skills with Rune Master John Taiho. Suddenly there appears a treasure chest, and at that time this seems like a real deal. They opened that and gained the reward chest, which is a jackpot. They acquired 1,500 heads, a lot of gold, and distinct gifts from battling with the ghoul kind. While Somin was distracted by the gold coins, Jeongjin focused on the Ghoul King's aura gloves. He tells Nam-gung that the glove has only one feature, and it stinks too. Nam-gung replies that concentration isn't just about attack accuracy, it's also useful for everything from crafting magical items to using magic itself, and assures him that the smell will fade away. Jeongjin says that if it's powerful, he might take it, and puts the glove on while pinching his nose. With a straight face, Nam-gung informs him that it will take 3 years for the smell to completely disappear. Hearing this, Jeongjin nearly throws up. Nam-gung gets their attention, informing them that the main reward lies elsewhere, and takes out the Ghoul King's old keys. He starts saying that these keys can unlock the Ghoul King's treasure chamber, and there seems to be one for each of them. Somin asks about the scroll in Nam-gung's other hand, to which he tells her that if they use this scroll in the treasure chamber, a dungeon will appear. He hands both of them one key each, and takes his while saying that if they head underground, they will be separated, and instructs them not to be surprised if they end up alone. Somin examines the key and says that she has to choose one of the doors, but the crucial part is that you can't return through a door once you've passed through it. Jeongjin looks up to Nam-gung and asks what the best choice is in this scenario. Namgung replies that he didn't clear this place in his previous life, so he's not sure. The only thing he knows is that the person who cleared this place acquired the crown of Kundal, an item for necromancers, so it won't be useful for them. Jeongin stares at him and thinks that even though Namgung says this is his second life, he still doesn't know a lot of things. Namgung turns around, instructing them that it's only the first dungeon, so they don't need to be too cautious when picking one. He also tells them that Myung-hoon should be waiting, so they should all hurry up. Namgung walks ahead as the secret dungeon appears in front of him. He examines the big, round golden walls and thinks about how massive and more fascinating they are than Jor's East Gate. By saying this is for an emperor, they're stating facts. He walks toward one of the 1,000 doors, which has Morno's Thornblade written on it. Namgung says that, as expected, every door only has names but no explanations. He remembers that Morno's Thornblade is an item he saw in his previous life, and that the twin daggers were used by the Japanese demon hunter, Sinomiya, so it's probably not significant to acquire now. He walks toward another door and smirks as he reads the title, Balansar's Book. The door piques his interest, as all he'd heard before were rumors and he couldn't figure out how to get it, but it turns out one could acquire it this early. He opens the door and walks into an empty room with a glowing book in the center, the Book of Balansar, with all the necessary information about it. Soman and Jeongjin hear a sudden noise and find Namgung walking toward them. He asks both of them if they've made a good choice. Jeongjin tells him that he did think it through, but the information was weird, so he's not sure if he made the right decision. Soman comes forward, showing her dad her choice. He looks at the bracelet she's wearing, while Soman informs him that upon sleeping with magical healing effects, her powers slightly increase. Namgung tells her that she made a great choice. Jeongjin then takes his sword out and tells Namgung that he has chosen this one. Namgung looks at him and asks why he chose a sword instead of a bow. Jeongjin cheerily tells him that the name sounded cool, that's why he chose the sword. Namgung asks if he knows how to wield a sword, to which Jeongjin replies that he doesn't, but it's still cool. Namgung looks at him with a confused expression. Hojun and Myung-hoon slash the goblins here and there as they come back to hack. Hojun tells Myung-hoon that the Tonfa is great, but with only 2 of them there, the goblins don't seem to end. Myung-hoon smirks and asks if he's tired already, and where has their platoon's stamina king gone? Hojun smiles and asks back if Myung-hoon still has strength left to joke. The bloodthirsty goblins double in size as they get the order from the captain to retreat because their troops are at their limits. Myung-hoon yells, asking what will happen to Sinchan. He tells them to quit bragging and kill one more goblin at least. Hojun hesitates as a dagger comes rushing toward him, but in the blink of an eye, Myung-hoon is in front of him with a dagger pierced in his shoulder. Myung-hoon falls to the ground, mumbling that it's paralyzing poison and he can't use his muscles anymore. Hojun yells that they must retreat now for the sake of Myung-hoon's recovery. Myung-hoon replies that he's fine and it's only a little tingling sensation. Hojun tells him that it's goblin poison, and they don't know what substance it's made of, so he needs medical treatment. But Myung-hoon weakly gets on his feet. He painfully mumbles to Hojun that if they retreat now, Sinchan will fall, and the spawned goblins will soon take over Seoul. He holds Hojun's wrist, telling him to continue fighting, not as a soldier, but as Kang Hojun. Something shifts in Hojun's behavior as he holds his weapon tightly, moving toward the goblins at a slow pace with bloodshot eyes, as if he has lost his senses as the ogre, Kang Hojun. On television, a local answers the question, what did he see happening there? He replies that the person was too ferocious to be called a human in fact. Maybe he wasn't, since in his hands, the goblins were ripped apart like pieces of paper. The reporter asks again if he's saying that the person fought all those monsters alone. The man tells the reporter that he wasn't alone. He was with another man wielding a giant sword. The reporter then asks if he thought of them as being prophets. The man questions about the prophets, so the reporter informs him that it was mentioned by the British actor Alec Truman at a press conference yesterday, saying that the prophets were the saviors who would save the world. The man pauses but then replies that he does not know about prophets, and rather than saviors, the people he saw were more like destroyers, in and of themselves. The goblin pierces the sword into Hojun, but his demeanor doesn't change, leaving the goblins confused. He moves forward with his bloodshot eyes. In an instant, another goblin covers the previous one, coming face to face with Hojun. Myung-hoon looks at the new goblin, thinking if that's the giant warrior, but it's smaller than the guy from last time. He wonders that even if it's a smaller warrior, for Hojun to face it alone would be very hard. He turns his face around to see a busted car as an idea comes to his mind. Hojun comes face to face with the goblin. Out of his senses, he mumbles that the goblin is big. The goblin punches him, but he blocks the attack, registering that its punches are weak despite its height. He mumbles something like, "My punch hard," and punches through the goblin, sending it reeling back. Kang Hojun has a nickname, Ogre. He was inherently able to control his breathing. Using this ability, he can minimize the blood flow to his brain. The reason for this is to conserve the blood consumed by the brain. An adult's brain consumes about 20% of the oxygen inhaled through the respiratory system. In other words, it uses an average of 600 mmol of oxygen per minute. A considerable amount of glucose is also needed, and by using this high-quality blood in the muscles instead of the brain, he gives up some of his brain function and gains superhuman strength, along with increased muscle fiber regeneration. That is Kang Hojin's ogre state. Hojin's punch left the goblin thinking if he's even a human. Just when Hojin was about to end that big goblin, the previous tiny one came and pierced its dagger through Hojin. Hojin kills the smaller goblin right then and there, leaving the bigger goblin crying in agony. The big goblin's eyes turn red with anger as it stands up, throwing Hojin in the air with a single punch. He attacks Hojin, who coughs up some blood. A fatal flaw of the ogre state is that because the base of the ogre state is restricting the blood flow to the brain, it cannot be maintained for long periods of time. Usually humans die within a few tens of seconds with blocked brain blood flow. Because the ogre state doesn't completely block the blood flow to the brain, it can last for a little over 5 minutes, but nevertheless, Hojin doesn't have much time. His remaining time is 1 minute. The goblin starts to land another punch, but suddenly a car comes crashing into him. Myung-hoon comes out of the car, asking Hojin if he's alright. A fire bursts out from the busted car, but the goblin comes walking out of it with tears in its eyes. Myung-hoon gets shocked seeing this, but Hojun, mumbling incoherent words, gets up on his feet. He grits his teeth. With only 7 seconds remaining, he charges toward the goblin as the monster also runs to attack him with murderous intent. Myung-hoon counts to 7 seconds and closes his eyes, but when he opens them again, he finds the goblin dead and Hojin lying unconscious beside him. Myung-hoon starts saying that he is completely drained, to which Hojin replies that he can't get up either. As more and more goblins start coming their way, Myung-hoon asks if this is how they're going to die. Hojin says that they have done enough already. Myung-hoon replies that people say heroes die young and says that his life wasn't bad either. But then, a slashing sound shocks him as he wonders where it came from. He looks up and finds each and every goblin in sight frozen, as he hears Namgung praising him, saying that he did a good job hanging in there, and that it's been a while since he met Hojun. Namgung appears with a sword in his hand as he orders them to get some rest while he takes care of the rest. Namgung activates ice through his sword, freezing the goblins as he tells Soman to use fire and melt them. Soman exerts fire, melting the goblins away. After a while, Namgung informs them that it appears they have cleared up all of them, and adds that compared to the Ghoul King, the goblins were child's play. Myung-hoon gets on his feet and asks Namgung how he got here so quickly without a car. Namgung, without turning, nods toward the station. Myung-hoon's eyes widen upon realization. He asks hurriedly if they came from Sinchon Station, because that place should be infested with goblins. Before he could finish his sentence, Namgung replies that they killed every goblin at Sinchon Station. Myung-hoon gives him a thumbs up and says that he expected exactly that from Namgung. Jeongin comes forward and asks Namgung if they can go and see his father now, to which he replies that it's exactly what they are going to do next. Jeongjin reminds him again that he mentioned they could buy the elixir with the dungeon reward, but they are nowhere near 400,000 heads. Namgung turns to face him and informs him that he never said they could earn 400,000 heads from the dungeon. Jeongjin looks at him with a confused face. Soman adds that now that she thinks about it, she asks her dad what reward he picked in the dungeon. Namgung takes out the glowing book and tells them that he picked the Book of Balancer, which can help them trade one item for another, and is consumed upon use. Hojin peeks at the book and asks if another item will be summoned in exchange for the one inserted. It seems like a gambling item. He asks if Namgung is into gambling stuff. Soman also adds that then it's a bit of a waste to put in any item above normal grade. Namgung takes out a broken pendant and informs them that this is where the book's secret lies, and starts putting the pendant into the open book. He tells them that feeding the book a rare item is the secret. As he closes the book, the pendant gets sucked in. More energy gets activated, and the Book of Balancer changes color to a shiny golden hue of rare grade, and changes its name to the Great Balancer. Hojin, upon seeing this, exclaims that it's crazy how putting in an item yields a higher grade item. They start looking around for the highest grade item they have. Namgung catches sight of Myung-hoon's sword. He takes the sword from him and starts feeding it to the book. The book begins sucking it in, and when it returns the sword, it is of epic grade. Namgung informs them that even though it's not quite a sword with an ego, since it's epic grade, it seems to choose its owner. The sword starts consuming the energy of its wielder, and mind energy begins forming in the blade. Myung-hoon says that this sword is perfect for Namgung since he uses necromancy, but he didn't have a proper weapon until now. Namgung thanks Myung-hoon for the sword, to which he replies that the beheading sword was Namgung's anyway. He weakly scratches his head and asks what kind of weapon he is going to use now. Namgung passes him his previous sword and tells Myung-hoon that he's going to use this. Myung-hoon exclaims that this sword froze all the goblins and admits he had been wanting to try it out. Namgung informs him that Jeongin knew this would happen, so he chose it carefully and didn't just pick it for its name without understanding swordsmanship. Jeongin jumps in and asks what about the 400,000 heads and the elixir. He thinks to himself that a second life, as he suspected, is bullshit. Namgung assures him that there's no need to worry about it because he has killed all the goblins in the basement of Sinchon Station and earned the title of Goblin Ruler. Thanks to that, he has gained access to their vault, and from there, he retrieved 550,000 heads. He shows them a bag filled with heads and tells them that this is more than enough to buy the elixir. Jeongin smiles and says that as expected of Namgung, it's amazing. Namgung starts saying that since things have been more or less sorted, he instructs Hojun and Myung-hoon to go to the press conference. With things under control, the reporters will gather there eventually, and he wants to ensure everything goes according to his plan because the other prophets can't learn about his identity. He further tells them that they've endured a lot of battles and fatigue, so dealing with reporters will be less physically taxing than accompanying them. He has a request for them to pretend to be prophets and do the interviews. Myung-hoon exclaims, realizing that this is why Namgung sent him to Sinchon first, to make him appear as the prophet. Namgung thinks that according to the plan, Myung-hoon and Hojun are gaining attention. They make their journey toward the hospital where Jeongin's father lies. They enter the hospital and find it odd because there is no one in sight. Namgung says that even if a few goblins came to the hospital, with the presence of police and military, it shouldn't be this chaotic. Jeongjin tells them that his father is in the intensive care unit and they need to hurry. Namgung tells Gyeongin to lead the way. They run toward the direction, but a cry for help stops Namgung. He turns toward the voice and sees a girl asking for help. He asks if she is all right and what happened here. She tells him that some suspicious people showed up and turned the hospital into a mess as they killed everyone and took all the heads. Namgung repeats it wasn't the goblins but humans. She offers her hand to him, saying that those people might return. So could he help her? He moves his hand to help her. Somin and Jeongjin hear the noise. Selman asks what made that noise. Jeongjin tells her he didn't hear anything. Somin tells him that her dad disappeared. Jeongjin informs her that this is Namgung's second life, so he probably remembered something important and left in a hurry. Rather than worrying, they need to go check on his father's condition. Somin thinks that she can't leave Jeongjin, who is weaker than her, so she goes with him to see his father. Namgung pulls the girl's hand toward himself, and the girl asks what he's doing all of a sudden. Namgung sees the ring and asks if that is Shanan's needle. It's not as potent as the Red Hornet's poison needle, but it's more than usable on humans. Namgung realizes that the culprit who caused this chaos in the hospital is her. In an instant, the girl takes out a knife and swings it toward him. She grits her teeth, saying that everyone else was deceived, but not him. Namgung tells her that thanks to the rune of legerity, which he obtained from a dungeon. The girl replies that runes are already appearing, and according to the information injected, they aren't common items, so this is for the best. And since he has already been to dungeons, he must have other rewards. Her eyes turn red as she says that though it's a pity his face is her type, she'll take it off his body. Namgung replies that his only type is his wife, and he has no business with her. She strides toward him with her dagger and tells him that he won't make it out alive. The woman attacks Namgung, but he dodges the dagger and grabs both her wrists to stop her. After giving her an intense glare, he throws her onto the ground. The woman, however, manages to balance herself after sliding a bit too far. Clicking her tongue, she says that she thought he was something special and asks him if he is really going to be so boring, since she's getting disappointed. Namgung analyzes her and realizes that he can take care of her easily, but he still needs to think of his public image. Because even if she is a trashy person, there is nothing good that will come from killing someone, yet. After coming to this decision, he says, slightly above a whisper, that it is, if he has eyes watching him. Namgung takes out his sword, which shocks the woman, making her question her eyes. She exclaims that it's not something he can just buy, even if he killed a great ton of goblins. He dashes toward her, saying that since it's only the two of them, he will kill her without worrying about other things. Telling her not to worry, he adds that he'll make sure she feels no pain. She tries to stop his sword with her ordinary dagger, which results in the blade of her dagger being sliced into 2 pieces. At this point, she is quite astonished and scared for her life, and all her arrogance washes away. In a world where the apocalypse arrives, Chaesong-ah was like a newborn lion cub with the natural-born talent of becoming the king of beasts, a savage beast, waiting for its time. A newborn cub, just like any other mammal, is full of curiosity. Especially because it is a highly intelligent predator, it feels interested in new things and bullying them, as if it were testing its strength. However, the moment it was faced with that, it was overwhelmed with an emotion that goes beyond curiosity, and that is fear. An untrained feeling that silences even the savage beast's instincts, a power that cannot be defined with a word like power or force, something that carves itself into the definition of audacious, a newborn cub, rooted in the supernatural, an absolute power. Song-ah looks at Namgung in fear, realizing that she will get slashed even if she blocks it. Unless she dodges, she will die. With that said, She senses how her body is moving on its own to survive. She jumps away with tears in her eyes to dodge his attack, telling herself that he is a tyrant. She curses him and thinks he has lost his mind, regretting how she just had to pick the wrong guy. She shuts her eyes in fear, admitting her death as she accepts she is going to die. Before Namgung can swing his sword and finish her off, he hears Soman's voice calling him. He turns around to see Soman looking at him from behind, as he points his sword at Song-ah, who has fallen to the ground. Her eyes widen in shock and disbelief until Gyeongin also comes, notifying Namgung that his father is okay. As Gyeongin tells him about not having the elixir and says he needs to come fast, Gyeongin also notices how he is pointing his sword at Song-ah. Soman asks her father in shock what he is doing, which reminds him of what his old friend Clark from his past life told him. Clark had advised Namgung once that if he ever went back to the past, he shouldn't go around killing people so easily, because he would make enemies if he kills. Clark further told him about a hell where humans kill each other. If the high beings wish to see a world like that, then Namgung needs to go against them. Clark called Namgung a godslayer, saying although he may kill gods gruesomely, he is not a murderer. After recalling Clark's words, he realizes he almost killed someone in front of his daughter, and that Clark might be right. Therefore Namgung answers his daughter that he is doing nothing and tells her this woman tried to steal the head, so he was just giving her a little scare. Soman exclaims in relief, and still in a slightly shocked manner, that is what was going on. However, Gyeongin looks unconvinced, as if he might have guessed that Namgung was not going to stop at just a little scare. Namgung turns to Song-ah and warns her intimidatingly not to do something like that again, and tells her to stay out of his sight. She accepts that she has understood and tries to scoot backwards, but the bruise on her ankle is so bad that she wonders if it broke just from his sword. Gyeongin and Soman turn to leave, telling Namgung to hurry and go to Gyeongin's dad. Namgung tells them he will be there in a second as he keeps standing in front of Song-ah. He finally turns to leave but stops and asks her name. She tells him, while stuttering in fear, that it is Chae Song-ah. Namgung tells her he will remember her name and leaves along with the kids. They arrive at the ICU room where Gyeong-in's father, John Tae-ho, is admitted. Gyeong-in tells his father that he has brought Namgung. Namgung, after greeting Jeon Tae-ho, tells him his name and takes Tae-ho's oxygen mask, asking him to excuse him. Namgung then pours the elixir into Tae-ho's mouth slowly from the bottle. The elixir works successfully, and Tae-ho slowly opens his eyes. At the England Disaster Response and Control Center, a woman asks her boss, Alec, if he has seen the video on YouTube. He affirms and says that if it is not fake, that means 2 unbelievable humans are in Korea. Another man comes and stands beside the woman, informing their boss that the soldier's name is Kang Hojin and his skills are very good. The woman asks the boss if he saw the normal weapon Hojin used, adding that it is a bit risky to select a weapon solely by trusting information. She further says the one beside him, his sword, is probably something that is not in the pockets of the giants. Alec, while drinking wine from his glass, tells them the items differ for each orifice and each region, or so they say. When the woman says that it is at least a rare item, which does not make any sense, Alec summons his sword, saying, "Who knows? He might just be a prophet like me." He then says that if that's the case, there's a high chance that it is the man beside Kang Hojin, not Hojin himself. Because if he is a prophet like Alec, it makes sense that he is using a specialized weapon. When Alec asks what if they want to meet that guy, does that mean they have to meet Kang Hojin then? The woman replies that Korea is in the world's spotlight and tells Alec that this is not what their plans were. Alec, annoyed, says he knows and tells her that the spotlight must always be on them, on him, and only he can be the savior. The woman, resting her hands on her hips, asks him what he plans to do with them. The man beside her suggests Alec try to recruit them, since it is better to get them on the good side before they get on the other prophet's side. When the woman questions the possibility of them refusing, Alec shuts his eyes. When he opens them, they are glowing blue as he says, "Then we'll have to cut away the sprouts." Namgung, Soman, and Myung-hoon arrive outside the building of Namgung's apartment. To their astonishment, the building has been destroyed and burnt down. Myung-hoon, in shock, mentions how they dealt with the time of dusk, and to think they would come back to something like this happening to Namgung and Soman's house is crazy. He asks Namgung if he thinks it is the goblins that did this. After noticing 2 yakshas, one of them getting scolded by the other, Namgung answers to Myung-hoon that it is not the goblins, but judging by the state of it, it looks like the yaksha landed on the wrong coordinates. When Soman hears this, she runs to the yaksha at fault and pulls his hair by getting on his shoulder while Gyuryu tries to stop her. Whereas Myung-hoon states it seems like not only did the Gyuryu come, but also all the nation's yakshas as well, and unfortunately to Namgung's house. However, Namgung says it is fine since he has already prepared a panic room in case something like this happened, and turns to walk away in that direction. They walk through a path in the woods all night to reach the panic room, and Myung-hoon asks him about when he prepared a panic room, or if he prepared it because of the apocalypse. Namgung denies it and answers that he prepared it in case North Korean soldiers attacked. This surprises Myung-hoon, and he exclaims at how well-prepared Namgung is. Namgung opens a gate in the ground, leading to an underground panic room through the stairs. When they get inside, Somin expresses her dislike, asking in a disgusted manner if they have to stay here. Namgung mentions that at least they have food and other necessities. He says there are a few factors lacking in modern architecture when it comes to surviving the apocalypse, so if they strengthen the building with the items Jor gave him, it will become a safer, more livable place. And he takes out the Goblin Stronghold crystal ball, which expands or creates a dwelling. He twists the ball, and a cave appears, attached to the panic room, making it larger. Somin's face easily gives off her dislike towards it, but Namgung tells them that it is like this just for now, and if he develops the stronghold, this will become a safe house that will protect them. After saying so, he thinks about how he has never seen it in his past life, but this is what a level 1 stronghold looks like. Myung-hoon looks at the newly created space and chuckles, telling Namgung it is cool. When Somin asks her father about when they are going to move out, he does not reply, as he is busy checking some updates out on his mobile phone. He says Hojin was probably contacted by Alec by now, and looking at his contact list, he decides to commence the plan soon. Alec and both of his partners are flying through the sky in a private jet when Alec gets a call from an unknown caller ID. The woman asks who it is, wondering if it is that Hojin guy, but he shushes her and picks up the call. The person on the other side tells Alec to be careful because the Pathfinder of the Fog's prophet has their eyes on him. This makes Alec yell in anger, but the person on the other side hangs up. Alec thinks about how a Pathfinder's prophet's abilities are said to be foresight, according to his high being's intel, an ability with which one can see into the future. He thinks it is an overpowered ability, but they probably cannot use it to their will yet, and that is if they are like Alec. But if the contents of the call are real, the Pathfinder's prophet knows Alec is heading to Korea right now. He calls Johanna, the woman on her team, and tells her to push back the time they set up to meet Kang Hojin a little bit, since he needs to alert the future. The man who called Alec was none other than Namgung, who, after hanging up the call, says to Alec in his head to try his best torturing his brain for ideas all he wants, because he is already in the palm of Namgung's hand anyway. Namgung had made the call outside of the safe room, and Myung-hoon also came out. He asks Namgung about who he called since Alec has called to change the time and location of the meeting, which is 3 hours later than before and at Uedo, 63 Square. Namgung tells Myung-hoon that he told Alec about Ninagawa Erika watching him. This surprises Myung-hoon, and when he asks Namgung if he contracted Erika too, Namgung denies it, saying in this life, Erika and he have no connection, but making Alec believe that she is here is the important thing. He calls Alec timid and distrusting, saying he is just using Alec's mental weakness and digging further into them. Moreover, Namgung says he plans to make Erika come here, because once she sees the future made by them, she will die to come here. After saying this, Namgung says he will be on the move first and tells Myung-hoon to go with the plan. Myung-hoon gulps down before saying he wonders what will happen if 3 prophets gather in Korea, but Namgung assures him that nothing will happen because they will be the ones that are going to protect Korea in their stead, starting from the second Hell Gate. After landing in Korea, Johanna asks Alec what they should do until then. He tells her to look around 63 squares and make preparations. The man on their team, Hansen, says he is hungry and asks if they can eat something first since everything is better on a full stomach. Johanna looks at him confusedly and asks him where he learned to say that, so he answers that he lived in Korea before, and that is an old Korean saying. Alec says there is a high chance that there will be a fight, so it is a good idea to eat. When he tells them to head over to a steakhouse recommended by a Michelin guide, Hansen cries out to Alec that when one is overseas, they need to experience the country's eating culture, and he goes ahead of them to stop a cab, telling them to just follow him since he knows a place. Johanna scoffs and tells Hansen to not stuff his face and focus on the mission, wondering what is even there to eat in a tiny country like this. And after going through the Hell Gate, it is probably all broken now. After they arrive outside a restaurant, Johanna calls a building just a 40-year-old place. However, when they ate, she could not help but lick her bowl clean. Akex tells her to eat slowly, as no one is going to steal her food, whereas Hansen happily mentions knowing how to eat delicious food now. Alec picks up some kimchi on his fork, saying he doesn't like it, but apparently Johanna gets offended. She tells him that the Koreans eat it every day, and instructs him angrily to get a spoonful of the galbi soup and top it off with a radish kimchi right now. Before he can do so, she herself stuffs it in his mouth, making Hansen remark how she has already fallen in love with the Korean food. When he asks if they should look around more since they still have some time before they meet Kang Hojun, she tells him to lead the way. They check out different places, and from trying on a hanbok to fried chicken, Johanna enthusiastically does it all with the other two. After they are done, she calls the country Korea amazing, acknowledging how they went through the Hell Gate, yet the cities are still operating like cities, and this is something that cannot be explained by a prophet's existence. Alec notices her changed behavior, and mentioning how the harsh Johanna is a bit soft today, He asks her if he has taken that much of a liking to this country. She suddenly feels shy and flustered at his comment, and taking longer steps ahead, she clears her throat and says they should head to the meeting location now since it is already time. Namgung arrives at a place to meet Erica, and while looking outside the tall building, she asks him if the regressor that her high being, the Pathfinder of the Fog, has mentioned, is him. In the same building where Ninagawa, Erica, and Nangum meet, Alec arrives to meet Hojun. He has an earpiece in his ear connected to Johanna, and looking outside the tall window, he says that at this height, it would be impossible to get ambushed or interfered with by outside parties, and says to Choi Myung-hoon in his mind that he will not be able to pull a trick. Johanna, through the earpiece, alerts Alec that there might be a wiretap, and he could be watched at this very moment, so she will hang up now, and tells him that they will wait in the designated area. He says okay to her and takes off the earpiece when someone calls his full name, Alec Trauman, from behind. On turning around, he sees a man in front of him who introduces himself as Kang Ho-jun. Ho-jun is a pretty muscular man with a scar over his right eye. After looking at him, Alec extends his hand for a handshake, saying to Ho-jun how he seems bigger than the videos portrayed him, and thanks him for coming despite the change of their appointment. However, Ho-jun does not shake hands with Alec, and saying there is no problem, he walks past Alec. Alec feels surprised at what just happened, and wonders if Ho-jun knows about his skill, Moon Vision, which is a skill that can tell him what power the opponent has. Looking at Ho-jun walking past him through the corner of his eye, Alec thinks that if Ho-jun knows about Moon Vision, he will definitely know about Alec's other skills as well, and maybe even the fact that he used Sun's Eye to find and recruit Johanna and Hansen. Thus, if it is true that he knows the existence of Johanna and Hansen, he might be hiding somewhere around the area too. However, all of this being just a guess, Alec decides to maintain a cooperative attitude. Alec turns around to look at Ho-jun and says he is surprised to hear Korea successfully protected its land when even England, with a prophet like him, suffered great damage. When Alec says it is all thanks to Ho-jun and others, as they were the ones who hunted down the magical beings in Shincheon, Ho-jun says he is flattered, adding it was thanks to the swiftly operating police and army and the citizens who cooperated. Alec tells him that he does not need to be so humble since he is here to have a conversation with a skillful person like him. On hearing Alec say this, Ho-jun suggests that if that is so, he should talk with this guy, and gestures towards the elevator behind himself, saying he got the weapons he used from this guy too. The door of the elevator opens, and Myung-hoon steps outside. When Alec looks at him, he smirks, as he has already expected this. Myung-hoon steps forward, and ignoring the extended hand of Alec, he scratches the back of his head while telling his name, and says he is now discharged, but was in the same unit as Captain Kang. Alec narrows his eyes at him and notices how Myung-hoon is also avoiding a handshake with him. It seems to Alec that Myung-hoon is prepared, and now he can confirm that his powers are exposed. Acknowledging that Myung-hoon was a soldier, Alec compliments him by saying there is no wonder his movements were outstanding and calls him surely different from a mere actor like himself. Myung-hoon chuckles and humbly declines the compliments, saying if it was not a world star like Mr. Alec, who spread the news about prophets on media, prophets would not have come out to the surface. Hearing him say so, Alec asks if that means he is a prophet himself, but Myung-hoon replies that he cannot open everything to him since he is not sure if Alec is an ally or an enemy just yet. After a little pause, Alec chuckles, telling Myung-hoon that he is right, as doubting is an important factor for a leader. With a wide grin, Myung-hoon states that, as expected, only great words come from Alec, and says he assumed Alec would understand with his generosity. Mentioning the name of a place, Catholic St. Mary's Hospital, Noryangjin Station, Myung-hoon says he assumes Alec also has the eyes to set the best locations. This shocks Alec, and his eyes widen in surprise. He realizes it is the place where Johanna and Hansen are waiting and thinks even if Myung-hoon is the Pathfinder's prophet, his powers should not be complete. Alec yells at Myung-hoon, stating that the world is being threatened and a prophet like Myung-hoon would know this. Thus, they need to combine their forces and say that Myung-hoon must have seen it if he has the powers of a prophet. Alec further yells that the effectiveness of modern firearms is coming to an end soon, and they need to guide humanity. He says that prophets are the only ones who can save the world, and that is why he is planning to make an international union, and he is here only to request that he join, and only to show him his teammates. After Alec finally quiets down, Myung-hoon says that it seems to him Alec wants to play the hero rather than save humanity. Alec chuckles, hiding his anger, and asks Myung-hoon what he means. Myung-hoon says that he is saying it in a likely manner, but he just wants to conquer the world by making a union that can control all countries. Alec smirks angrily and asks him if he can sense his intentions, to which he questions Alec about what if he can sense it. Alec's patience reaches its limit, and he summons his sword. As soon as he just raises his sword to swing it towards Myung-hoon, Ho-jun senses it with his foresighting power and jumps at Myung-hoon to save him from Alec's attack. The two of them fall down onto the ground, whereas Alec angrily remarks that this is why foresighting powers are so annoying. Alec says he really did not want him to be the foresighting prophet out of the 7 prophets, so if he spared his life, he would just be an obstacle to achieving Alec's goal. With that said, Alec yells at Myung-hoon to die as he burns with the energy. On the other hand, Namgung greets Erica, and after doing the same, Erica mentions how it seems they have known each other in his former life. Without answering her suspicion, he is quick to ask her how the future he planned out was. When she stays silent, he tells her that Alec Trauman and Choi Myung-hoon met, and Myung-hoon acts as if he is the Pathfinder's prophet. Now Alec wants Myung-hoon to be killed, the Pathfinder of the Fog's prophet to be precise. However, if Alec finds out that the Pathfinder of the Fog's prophet is actually her, Erica, not Choi Myung-hoon, he will come and try to kill her. Therefore, Namgung says she has no choice but to make an alliance with the man named Namgung before Alec comes because he is a regressor and he knows the future without foresighting powers. After stating all of this, Namgung asks her if she thought like this and came to Korea, and she confirms. He then tells her that she will have to play by his rules, but she puts aside her pride and comes, which makes her wise. She affirms before saying that she cannot remember the future like him, but she can take a glimpse of the future. Namgung extends his hand, which holds the phone that is connected with Myung-hoon on a call, and Alec's voice can be heard through the calling, yelling that he plans to kill the Pathfinder of the Fog's prophet. Namgung angrily asks her if she is talking about a future like this. Myung-hoon then asks Erica over the phone call if she heard it and tells her that, as expected, Alec is planning to kill her. When Alec hears him say that, he asks Myung-hoon in shock what he just said. Suddenly, a man creeps behind him secretly and punches Alec with great force. Alec gets slammed into the ground and he yells in pain. After he finally gets back on his feet, he angrily asks the man when he came here. The man, however, glares at him, and with his shirt displaying his love for Erica, he tells Alec there is nothing to know about, because the only thing he should know is that an enemy to Erica should be killed. As the tall and muscular man stands in front of Alec, Alec turns back to face Myung-hoon and furiously accuses him of tricking. Myung-hoon smiles innocently and tilts his head, asking Alec if he tricked him, as he never said he had the foresight ability. All he did was just toss some bait, and Alec's stupid self took it. This comment and nonchalance of Myung-hoon fuel Alec's anger, and when he yells at Myung-hoon, asking him what he just said, the man behind him punches Alec's stomach once again, telling him not to get distracted. Alec groans in pain as he falls onto the floor, and after he manages to sit up, he thinks how an ordinary person would have died from that punch. He wonders just who Erica is to have control over a monster like him. Alec wonders if Choi Myung-hoon is really not the prophet, or if he is, and he is deceiving Alec by creating a fake person named Erica, or if these lunatics are really Erica's lapdogs. As Alec is running his mind about the possibilities, the man asks him if he just thought of Mrs. Erica, and punches Alec's face, telling him not to dare to have Mrs. Erica on his mind. While talking to Erica, Namgung says that indeed, Alec Trauman had other intentions, and it is a desire that any human is sure to have, but very few can attain that ambition, and in that aspect, Alec Trauman is special. He further tells Erica that out of the 8 high beings, the observer of the sun and moon gives out the most advantages to its prophet once the carnival begins, pretending to be a high being full of humanity to fulfill its objective of amplifying human desire. However, what the observer of the sun and moon truly wants is to see the monastery of humans overflowing with greed, and to fulfill its perverted taste, Alec Trauman was chosen. Erica asks Namgung about him by questioning him if he can really say that he is different from Alec Trauman. She says to him, as he already knows, her foresight ability is still immature, and she needs affirmations about the far future that she cannot foresee. She says she needs a guarantee that he will not commit a betrayal, a guarantee that he will not end the existence of the human race. Namgung starts burning with his prophetic fire and says to Erica that it is a stupid question. He says that what she is really curious to know is what will happen in the end if she does not follow the regressor. On the other side, Alec barely manages to dodge the punch that the man throws at him and yells at the man that he does not know who this Erica is. After saying this, Alec reaches the limit of his anger, and as he gets up, he swings his sword rashly towards the man. The man nearly dodges it, making the sword break the pillar behind him. Alec mocks him for being quite fast for a man of his size. The man, with startled eyes, tells Alec that he is a natural-born killer, and tells him that he cannot compare him to an actor who fakes his actions. Alec asks him if his actions look like acting to him and teleports behind the man, making him flabbergasted. Alec then says to him from there, if that is the case, then it is quite unfortunate because he did not learn his movements from Hollywood, but from SLS. Hojin and Myung-hoon look at Alec and wonder if he means the assassination unit by SLS, which was disbanded a few years ago. Hojin then says to Myung-hoon that he thinks they should help that man named Igor. Myung-hoon, however, asks Hojin what he has seen up until now and tells him to look at Igor, asking if he cannot see Igor's fighting spirit as Igor and Alec are fighting. However, Igor turns his neck around, asking them for help by just the movements of his lips. Unfortunately, Myung-hoon interprets it as gets lost and tells it to Ho-jun, saying this is a fight between two men, so they should leave Igor to enjoy it. When Ho-jun says that he understands it, Myung-hoon tells him that Igor is a cool dude who is going to go down in history as a man who took down a prophet with his bare hands. Finally, Igor yells at them at the top of his lungs, cursing at them and telling them he needs help. Ho-jun and Myung-hoon get their weapons ready, but before they could step forward, Alec curses at the three of them, yelling at them to die as he swings his sword with full power. Igor flies far across the space, whereas Ho-jun and Myung-hoon block it with their weapons. Alec cracks his neck, and addressing Myung-hoon, he states how Myung-hoon managed to block the galaxy sword. But the sword he saw on YouTube was different, so there is no way Myung-hoon bought equipment that is on par with a sword given to him by his high being. Alec then asks him who it is who gave it to him, whether it is Erica or his high being. When Myung-hoon remains silent, Alec says if Myung-hoon plans to keep his mouth shut, then he has no choice. Since one is enough to interrogate, he tells Myung-hoon to die. Meanwhile, Myung-hoon realizes that he cannot control Tanyan's sword, as this is contracted to Namgung, and he is just borrowing this to pretend to be a prophet. However, he looks at the sword and asks his comrade, who used to be the beheading sword, if he will let out a cry once more. Myung-hoon starts burning with the fire of the sword, which confuses Alec, making him question what that is. He then swings his sword, throwing the powers at Alec, but he blocks them with the power of his own sword. Ho-jun also joins in and starts fighting against Alec, saying the SLS seems to be nothing. However, Alec blocks Ho-jun's weapon with his bare hand, saying it is as expected from active duty personnel, and asks him if he can take on 3 former SLS opponents. As Ho-jun's about to ask in confusion what 3 SLS opponents Alec means, Johanna creeps from behind him and hits his head, whereas Hansen punches Myung-hoon across the face. After Igor, Myung-hoon, and Ho-jun are all knocked out on the floor, Hansen advises Alec that it is best if they retreat, informing him that their escape route is ready so they should go. However, Alec says that before they go, they should end things by cutting their heads off and giving them to the mastermind. Hansen points at Igor, saying he knows this guy as he used to work in the Russian killer association called Zakat. The mastermind, whoever is behind this, is going to be more badass than him if they have got that guy serving him. Therefore, if they kill him, they might provoke his bosses unnecessarily. Alec angrily asks Hansen if he is telling him to be scared, but Hansen denies it. However, before he could explain himself, Ho-jun grabs his neck from behind, choking him. Johanna could not believe to see Ho-jun on his feet again, and says that she could have sworn she hit him directly in his C3 vertebra. Myung-hoon, who is lying on the floor, laughs and mocks her for mentioning the C3 vertebra. He tells them that it is nothing to their Ho-jun since he is an ogre. Ho-jun grabs Hansen by the neck and starts choking him. Myung-hoon watches and states bluntly that Ho-jun is an ogre. Johanna, surprised, asks if Ho-jun has some kind of hidden endowment. Myung-hoon smirks and replies that Ho-jun was just born like that. He adds that Ho-jun is the best among mammals, a sapien who surpasses other sapiens. Then, with a loud thud, Ho-jun tosses Hansen aside like he's nothing. Johanna watches the scene in disbelief, wondering if Ho-jun is concentrating all his blood flow into his muscles to pull off something like that with just one hand. Johanna tells Ho-jun that sure, he's got strength, but when it comes to technique, she's got the upper hand. She lashes out with her magic whip, crafted from the tail of a 9-tailed fox, striking at Ho-jun. But he catches the whip, yanking her closer and trying to land a blow. He quickly realizes it didn't work. In an instant, Johanna slips behind him, dodging and wrapping her arms around his neck in a chokehold. Myung-hoon stares in disbelief, struggling to understand how Johanna managed to dodge Ho-jun's crossline in a split second. He mutters that the SLS isn't just about superior battle sense. Johanna had completely analyzed an ogre's weaknesses and locked in a back choke, cutting off the blood flow in a flash. He wonders how Alec even managed to recruit someone like her. Myung-hoon realizes he should do something before it's too late. Just then, Alec approaches Johanna and Ho-jun, stating coolly that he'll cut Ho-jun's body in half. As Alec moves to strike, Myung-hoon steps in and blocks the attack with his sword. Alec yells at him, demanding to know how he's still standing and accusing him of getting ready to spout more bullshit. Myung-hoon calmly replies that it's just perseverance. Alec prepares to strike again, but Myung-hoon meets him with the same unwavering stance, saying it won't be enough to break his will. Alec attacks, cursing the whole time, but Myung-hoon holds him off again. As he fights, Myung-hoon reminds himself, the prophet is a prophet. Alec scoffs and mocks him, asking where all that perseverance goes now and why he's blocking like a coward. Myung-hoon knows deep down he can't resonate with the spirit of the sword at full strength without Namgung's spirit magic, and it's a miracle he's even lasted this long with a sword that's not his. He knows he can't win against Alec, but what he can do is buy time until that moment Namgung mentioned. Alec demands that Myung-hoon accept his fate and give up his will to live, but suddenly they hear Johanna calling out for help. Still choking Ho-jun, Johanna thinks they're all going to die if she lets go. She pleads with Alec to help her. Alec and Myung-hoon both turn toward them, just as Hojin begins to force her off his neck. Before Johanna can fall, Hansen catches her and tells her she did well. Hojin looks at Hansen surprised and asks how he's even alive. Hansen replies that his body's well trained. It doesn't break that easily. He admits it hurt like hell and he was down bad for a while, but now's the time for some bluffing. Hojin stares at him, saying he's surprised, but also stronger. Hansen grins and says Hojin might be stronger, but he's worse at Korean because he poured everything into strength. Hansen adds that Hojin needs to save some of that power for his brain and start using high-tech tools like he does. He then fires off his boom blaster magic, causing a loud explosion. Myung-hoon watches the blast and shouts Hojin's name. Alec takes the opportunity to strike at Myung-hoon again, furious that he dared take his eyes off him. After delivering damage to both Hojun and Myung-hoon, Alec turns to Johanna and Hansen, telling them it's all over. He orders them to behead the two Koreans and take the Russian thug away for interrogation. Alec then looks at Hansen and says he's not going to kill that Zakat guy right away like he said earlier, asking if Hansen's okay with that. Hansen replies that he's fine with it. Johanna steps up to Hojun, her whip ready, saying her spine nearly broke in half because of him. She asks Alec if she can be the one to kill him. Myung-hoon curses at her, yelling for her to back off. Alec looks toward Myung-hoon, but suddenly groans fill the air. Alec shouts in confusion, asking what the hell is going on. They all look up and see lizard men falling from the sky. Alec's expression turns grim as he realizes the second gate of hell is opening. He curses under his breath, knowing this just got a whole lot worse. Myung-hoon tells Alec that he's got a call and to pick it up. Alec snatches the phone from him and answers, demanding to know who it is. On the other end, Namgung calmly asks Alec how he's been. Alec immediately snaps, yelling at Namgung and accusing him of being behind the whole Erica-related mess. He threatens to find him, track him down, and kill him. Namgung replies that Alec can try, but only if he survives. He then warns Alec that he's in trouble if he doesn't hurry. Alec curses at him, saying he knew something like this would happen. Namgung responds that he wishes Alec the best of luck killing magical beings and surviving the chaos. He adds that Alec should feel lucky. He'll go down in history as the English prophet who saved Korea. Enraged, Alec smashes the phone to the ground and shouts for everyone to be killed, saying there's no need to spare a single one of them. Johanna gets ready with her whip made from the tail of the nine-tailed fox. But before anything happens, an arrow crashes through the glass window. Hansen immediately shields Johanna. Alec looks out the shattered window to see where the shot came from and realizes the arrow was fired from the ground and still made it all the way up here. He wonders how that's even possible. Did Namgung recruit someone with insane archery skills? More arrows start raining through the glass. Alec makes a quick decision, shouting that they're at a disadvantage and it's time to fall back. As they retreat, Johanna throws a glance at Hojun and tells him to consider himself lucky. Once they're gone, Myung-hoon sits up with a groan and says he nearly died. He turns to Hojun and asks if he's okay. Hojun replies that whatever just happened, it's not something he wants to do again. Meanwhile, Erica looks up at the sky and says to Namgung that the portal opened just like he said it would. She comments that the timing of the second gate's opening must have shifted because of the brief closing of the first Hell Gate. Then she turns to him and asks how he knew about the change in timeline, even as a regressor. Namgung answers that he doesn't just remember the future, he knows tricks and tactics others don't. He says Erica should know by now that once the first Hell Gate closes, dungeons start appearing all over the continents. Erica nods, saying Japan experienced that too. She explains that many powerful individuals from around the world entered those dungeons, and that's the hidden condition of the Hell Gate. After all the global dungeon walkthroughs are complete, the second Hell Gate opens. Namgung tells her that in his previous life, Japan was the last country to finish the walkthroughs, and her being here now means the condition has been fulfilled. He adds that's why he called her here, right at the moment the Hell Gate opens. Erica looks at him and says that with everything he knows, it's like he doesn't even need to see the future. Namgung tells her not to let her guard down. He explains that things in this life aren't going exactly the way they did before, and his correct prediction about the gate opening was partly thanks to pure luck. He admits that his memories from the past life aren't enough. Only a true prophet like her, someone superior to a regressor, can actually look into the future. Erica asks him what he wants from her. Namgung answers plainly. He wants her help to close the second Hell Gate. He says he was able to handle the first, but this one is beyond him. Erica says that with the airports and harbors shut down, it's not like she has much of a choice if she wants to return to Japan. This time, she says, they'll be the ones to lend a hand. She introduces her team, and Namgung nods, saying he expected she wouldn't come alone. The team leader steps up and introduces himself as Katsumata. Namgung comments that they seem well prepared, and he didn't expect the leader of the interlacers to show up in Korea. Erica replies that since a regressor could potentially be an enemy, she couldn't come empty-handed. Namgung says he understands, and now it's time for him to explain the strategy to walk through the Hell Gate. As Namgung walks to the glass window, he tells them not to worry too much about the Hellgate. Katsumata gives him a skeptical look and asks if he's being sarcastic. Namgung replies that he's not. There's someone else who's going to handle it. Katsumata and Erika both ask where this boss is going to appear. Namgung points outside toward the ocean, where a massive tornado is forming. He tells them that's the serpent, the boss of the second Hellgate. He explains that it's a monster that once preyed on entire oceans and that its size is beyond imagination. But there's a way to hunt it. Like all snake-type magical beings, it has a weak spot, an odd scale located right under its chin. Katsumata scoffs and says if it's just removing a single scale, that sounds like a piece of cake. Namgung quickly corrects him, saying he won't even scratch it with anything less than a rare-grade weapon. Erika chimes in, stating that as far as she knows, the only person with a weapon of that level is Alec Traman. Katsumata looks at Namgung and asks if he brought Alec here to hit the odd scale. Namgung replies that he didn't, because if he did, Alec would end up taking all the credit. Katsumata asks if Namgung plans to steal Alec's sword. Namgung grins and says that would be a great option, but there's no need for that. Suddenly, a sword smashes through the glass window. Erika's team flinches, surprised, and wonders what just happened. Katsumata looks outside and says the archer shot the sword from down there. Namgung picks up the sword and thinks to himself that if this weapon made it here, it means Myung-hoon is still alive. Holding the blade, he tells Katsumata that now that they have what they need to slash the odd scale, they'll head out as soon as he's ready. Katsumata smiles and replies that he's always ready. Namgung looks down at the serpent through the shattered glass window, gripping his weapon tightly. He turns to Katsumata and asks if they should test out the serpent's powers. Katsumata shrugs him off, saying he doesn't need such mere tools. He orders his members to take care of Erika, then leaps through the broken window without hesitation. Namgung watches him descend, muttering to himself that Katsumata truly deserves the name Sparrow Wings. Katsumata lands on the serpent and immediately attempts to slash its skin with his blades. Namgung follows close behind, digging his red sword into the serpent's flesh as he lands. He glances at Katsumata and comments that the serpent's skin is more slippery than he thought, and staying on it will be tricky. Katsumata agrees and says they'll need to end this quickly. He tells Namgung to follow him under the serpent's jaw. Namgung cautions him, saying rushing will only lead to mistakes. They need to enrage the serpent more first. Katsumata frowns and asks what he's talking about. Namgung swings his sword, sending out a red, glowing energy that makes the serpent let out a deafening growl. Katsumata yells at him, demanding to know what he just did. Namgung answers calmly that a small sacrifice is unavoidable if it means stopping the serpent from devouring the 5 oceans. Better to be eaten themselves, he says. He slams his sword into the serpent's body again, making it roar even louder. As the serpent opens its mouth, Katsumata dashes inside and secures a rope to its teeth. He shouts for Namgung, who comments on Katsumata's impressive talent. Katsumata reaches out and tells Namgung to give him his hand before the serpent closes its jaws. Namgung replies that he knows he needs to act fast and jumps in as well, sword ready. He slashes through the rope Katsumata tied to the teeth, and the serpent's mouth snaps shut. Meanwhile, lizard men are swarming Alec, Hansen, and Johanna. The trio fights back while shielding themselves and swearing under their breath. Johanna grumbles that no matter how many lizard men she kills, their numbers don't seem to go down. Hansen snaps that these aren't goblins. These monsters never die. Alec finally pulls out his power tool and wipes out all the lizard men in one blast. After the dust settles, he orders Hansen and Johanna to run. Elsewhere, Hojin and Myung-hoon observe them from a distance on a bridge. Myung-hoon notes that Alec made it out long ago, but they're still trudging along the same road. Still gripping the unconscious Igor, he mutters about how bad the situation has gotten. They keep walking as Myung-hoon points out that Alec at least cleared the path ahead, making their progress easier. Along the road, they see corpses of lizard men everywhere, all sliced up cleanly. Hojin realizes Alec must be completely drained after that. Myung-hoon informs him that he passed Tanyan's sword to Gyeong-in, and if they run into Alec now, they're basically dead. He checks in with Hojin, asking if he's good to keep moving. Hojin reassures him that he just needs a short break and he'll be fine. He then wonders aloud whether Gyeong-in and Mr. John Taiho managed to escape, considering how many lizard men are swarming around. Myung-hoon looks up at more lizard men dropping down and says that back then, there weren't this many, so he's sure they made it out. He adds that if anything had gone wrong, Namgung would have contacted them by now. Their plan was for Gyeong-in to deliver the sword and then clear the area, so they should be near Ruru Tower. He tells Hojun they'll meet up with Gyeong-in and Mr. John Taeho at Ruru Tower. Hojun notes that Alec also seems to be heading that way. Myung-hoon sighs, saying it's not like Alec knows where Gyeong-in is. From afar, they spot Alec, Hansen, and Johanna still battling lizard men. Johanna shouts at Hansen, asking where the car is. Hansen yells back that there are too many lizard men in 63 Square, so he called for a vehicle to pick them up at Ruru Tower. They just need to make it 1 block down the road. Myung-hoon turns to Hojun and asks why he still can't reach Gyeong-in. Hojun replies that the base station must be down, killing all comms. He mutters that they should have brought a satellite phone. Myung-hoon says they'll find Kyung-in and Mr. John Taeho themselves. They have to, because if Alec runs into them first, he'll definitely try to kill Namgung and Kyung-in. Just as they look up, a group of lizard men growls from above and lunges at them. Myung-hoon unsheathes his sword and slashes through them, freezing them instantly. He sighs and says he's too young to die. But suddenly the lizard men start breaking free from the ice, growling louder. Before they can attack again, an arrow whizzes down from above, piercing a lizard man clean through the head. Myung-hoon and Hojun glance up and see Kyung-in standing on the bridge, bow in hand. He calls down to them, asking if they're okay. People continue to run and scream for help as chaos spreads. Lizard men emerge from the river, but glowing arrows strike their heads mid-charge. Salmon lifts her finger, conjuring a pink glowing energy that wipes them out instantly. Mr. John Taeho watches in awe, telling her that the world must have changed a lot while he was out cold, and that her magical abilities still fascinate him every single time. Salmon grins and tells him not to make a big deal out of it. It's all thanks to her skills. She adds that he could take down a lizard man in one shot too. Mr. John Taeho laughs, saying maybe buying that bow from the yaksha shop wasn't such a bad idea after all. He then asks if she thinks Namgung's doing all right. They both look down at the serpent, and Salmon reassures him. Her dad's a regressor, so there's no need to worry about him. She admits she's more concerned about Kyung-in and Myung-hoon, wondering if the two of them have already met up or not. Up above, Hojun and Myung-hoon stare at Kyung-in and ask what he's doing there. Kyung-in responds that their wounds looked serious, so he came to help. Myung-hoon smiles and thanks him, saying they're already fine. They're pros after all. Hojun asks about Mr. John Taeho. Kyung-in explains that his father went off to support Soman, who's holding off lizard men by the Han River Park. He adds that getting down from this height is a bit difficult for him, so they should just meet at the Olympic Bridge intersection. It's only a 10-minute walk. Suddenly, Alec approaches them, saying there's no need for that. He'll bring Kyung-in down himself. The others panic as Alec swings his sword, striking the bridge and causing it to shake. Kyung-in loses his footing, nearly falling. Hojun watches, stunned. Alec didn't seem this strong back at 63rd Square. He wonders if Alec really powered up this much in such a short time. Alec asks Kyung-in if he was the one who shot at them and comments that while Kyung-in's archery is decent, his physique is nothing impressive. Clinging to the cracked wall, Kyung-in calls for help. Myung-hoon yells at Alec to stop, while Hojun sprints toward Kyung-in, shouting that he'll save him. Alec smirks and mocks Myung-hoon, saying he was so bitter about achieving nothing and yet walked straight into the lion's den. Alec calls out to Johanna and Hansen, asking what they're doing. Johanna points toward the horizon and says the serpent is making its way onto land. The serpent lets out a thunderous roar and smashes into nearby buildings. Myung-hoon shouts for everyone to move. People begin to scatter as the destruction spreads. Hojun manages to grab Kyung-in, pulling him to safety, and asks if he's okay. Kyung-in reassures him that he's fine. Hojun shouts out Myung-hoon's name, trying to locate him in the chaos. Alec covers his nose, cursing at the stench. He looks up at the serpent and notices a strange, off-colored scale. He recalls the observer of the sun and moon once saying that the odd scale could only be destroyed by a weapon of rare grade or higher. He wonders if that's why the observer gave him this weapon in the first place. Alec grins, thinking that he truly is the chosen one. He tells Myung-hoon that not even he or Erica saw this future coming. Chuckling, Alec claims that he alone is the future, and he's going to claim the world boss reward. He adds that it's not that they failed to foresee this outcome. It's that such a future simply didn't exist until now. Then, the odd scale shatters. The world boss has been defeated. Namgung emerges from the broken scale, and both Hojun and Kyung-in light up with joy. Myung-hoon stares, overwhelmed at the sight of his brother. Alec's eyes widen as he realizes it was the red sword Namgung was using. He screams at Namgung, demanding to know if he was the one behind Myung-hoon. Namgung tells him not to make such a big deal out of it. Calmly, he thanks Alec for taking care of the lizard men and says Korea is safe once again. He also thanks him for participating, revealing that he was the one who lured the serpent there. A notification flashes. All participants within a 50-meter radius have been rewarded with the serpent's scale. Alec yells at Namgung, asking if he really played along with their entire plan. Namgung raises the odd scale of the serpent in his hand. Johanna screams at Alec, telling him to take the scale from Namgung. Both she and Hansen charge toward him, but suddenly arrows rain down from above, forcing them to block the attacks. Katsumata appears, stepping into view. He explains that the trick was piercing through the serpent's organs and exiting through the odd scale. He turns to Namgung, agreeing that while the serpent was massive, it wasn't exactly a tough opponent. Katsumata eyes Alec, Hansen, and Johanna, and says it looks like the real threats are still standing. Everyone stares each other down, weapons drawn and ready. Alec sighs in frustration, gritting his teeth. He mutters about how many people, Erica, Namgung, some archer, and now a ninja, don't seem to know their place. With a dark smile, he declares that there can only be one chosen one. Hojun, Myung-hoon, and Kyung-in prepared to fight, and Johanna and Hansen did the same. Alec swung his sword in full rage, shouting at them to die. But suddenly, Soman appeared in the sky, stopping Alec's attack. She calmly asked if Alec was the prophet she saw on television. Alec looked at Soman in confusion, wondering if there was a prophet in Korea with magic skills. And more than that, using magic to such a degree at this stage was simply unbelievable. Namgung snapped his fingers, and Katsumata immediately ordered his members to clear the way for Alec and his team, saying their British guests were heading home. Katsumata's members threw weapons in their direction. Alec gritted his teeth as the weapons pierced through the lizard men. He told Namgung he couldn't detect them because he was too focused on Katsumata's group. As Alec turned to leave with Johanna and Hansen, Namgung told them to head towards Seongnam City, explaining that the Incheon airport should be closed, but the Seoul one was still likely functional. Namgung added that they would be allowed to pass only after saying the name Kang Ho-jun. Alec smirked and replied that he understood. Glancing up at the reporters recording him from a helicopter, Alec thought fighting here would ruin his reputation, and he had no choice but to back off, not wanting to disappoint his fans. As Alec began to leave with Johanna and Hansen, Namgung looked down at Soman and remarked that fortunately, they were backing off. He praised her for showing up at the perfect moment, saying that fighting them would have been more troublesome than fighting the serpent. John Taeho interrupted, telling Namgung that Alec and his team were still human, and it sounded strange for someone who just slayed that monster to say such a thing. Namgung replied that there were tactics for hunting magical creatures, but none for people like them. He added that they would only continue to grow stronger. Taeho then asked if it was really the right move to give 20,000 heads to people that dangerous, pointing out that rewarding them didn't seem necessary. They all watched the disappearing figures of Alec, Johanna, and Hansen. Namgung said they wouldn't have backed off if they'd received nothing. Besides, he added, Alec would probably feast on the dungeon appearing in England anyway, so it wouldn't make a difference whether they gave him the heads or not. From behind, Erica spoke up, saying the real deal was who slayed the world boss first, and that this time, they would be the ones to walk away. Namgung turned around, looking at her in confusion. Erica declared that they would be the ones to take down the world boss next time. Namgung said he'd be looking forward to it. Hojin asked Erica if she and her team were heading back to Japan, and if he should contact the airport. Erica replied that it was fine, they would handle it themselves. Her team members were holding Igor, and Erica explained they were only there to take Igor with them. Namgung remarked that a worldwide influencer really was on a different level. Myunghoon asked him if the Ninagawa family truly had enough power to request a plane from another country. Namgung nodded, saying they did, and now, they'd need to keep a closer eye on them than on a mere celebrity like Alec. Then, Namgung took out a small packet from his pocket, saying they had something Erica's team didn't. He opened it to reveal multiple runes. When asked what they were, Namgung explained it was thanks to Gyeongin that they were able to acquire them. He handed them the runes and told them to help themselves. Namgung glanced at Mr. John Taeho, who was holding one of the runes, and thought to himself that even though Taeho's weapon wasn't the best, with this number of runes, he'd be fine. He knew using 4 runes at once at this stage might be extravagant, but the longer Mr. John Taeho survived, the more runes they'd be able to get. Taeho, filled with excitement, said he felt lighter and thanked Namgung. Namgung reassured him, saying it was no problem. After all, Taeho was a national athlete from the country's archery team, and it was a pleasure to help him. Namgung then announced to everyone that if they felt it necessary to use the runes for themselves, they shouldn't hesitate. Everyone agreed. Afterward, Namgung asked them to help him take care of the remaining lizard men. Soman smiled and said she'd finally be able to show off her skills. The second festival came to an end, and all survivors were given a reward, offering 1,000 heads. Myunghoon excitedly said they did it. Gyeongin also chimed in, saying it had finally ended. Myunghoon turned to Namgung and asked if the battle had felt easier this time. He added that at this rate, they'd finish everything in no time. Namgung warned Myunghoon not to get too hopeful, explaining that much stronger creatures awaited them and that they'd have to move just as planned, just like this time. Myunghoon chuckled and said Namgung never failed to impress him. As they walked on the bridge, Hojin asked if the Hell Gate was closed. Soman pointed toward the smoke rising from the National Assembly building. A news reporter broadcasted that the city was currently in chaos due to the damage, with restoration still far off. The reporter confirmed that the National Assembly building had indeed been damaged, and although there had been a disaster management meeting going on there, it couldn't withstand the attack from the second magical creature. People were now wondering who the victims inside the National Assembly were. Prime Minister Seo Jae-wook walked toward his office, lamenting that the president was dying and wondering what kind of nightmare this was. He muttered that the ministers of economy and finance, education and foreign affairs had all gone missing, and that they'd need to push forward the policy they had prepared. Minister Park Dae-ho told him that while the situation was tragic, they'd done a good job defending the country compared to others. He added that he didn't think anything more was needed. Prime Minister Seo Jae-wook turned to him in disbelief, asking how he could say something like that. He opened the door to his office and stepped inside. Agent Park Hyo-ju greeted him, and he took his seat. The Prime Minister then ordered her to bring him the team manager, the one who would oversee the vicious squad of the magical creature management team. He instructed her to call Namgung. Namgung sat on a wooden log, carefully holding his red sword. Myung-hoon walked up to him. Noticing that even in this situation, Namgung was still tending to his weapon. He could tell that Namgung was deep in thought, clearly confused about something. Sitting down beside him, Myung-hoon said he was sure Namgung was troubled by the news of the president's untimely death, but thankfully, they still had Prime Minister Seo Jae-wook, whom he also happened to know. Myung-hoon added that as long as Seo Jae-wook continued as acting president, Korea would be safe. Namgung nodded, admitting that Seo Jae-wook was trustworthy enough to take over a collapsed government. But then he said there was a problem. He told Myung-hoon that in his previous life, Seo Jae-wook had tried to form a monster hunting team, but unexpected issues had stopped the team from ever being completed. Namgung revealed that the Minister of Defense, Park Dae-ho, was going to stage a revolutionary coup. Myung-hoon looked at him in disbelief, asking if that was really true. Namgung replied that it was. In the previous life, Park Dae-ho seized power and declared himself president. He made the critical mistake of pulling military forces from across the country into Seoul, which led to every other city being left unprotected, and they were burned and destroyed as a result. Myung-hoon then asked if Namgung had known what would happen at the National Assembly, and if maybe it would have been better to go there and defend it himself. Namgung told him that he couldn't. The distance between the assembly and the place where the serpent was going to be summoned was too great. If he hadn't been there to stop it, the damage would have been far worse. Myung-hoon noted that Alec had also been a variable, but he stopped short as they noticed some men approaching. The men drew closer, and Namgung and Myung-hoon both looked up at them. One of them addressed Namgung, saying he had received orders to escort him, and asked if Namgung could join them for a moment. Namgung responded that people were usually supposed to introduce themselves first before making requests. The man chuckled and apologized, saying he was in a hurry. He extended a card toward Namgung and introduced himself as Lee Jin-won, a counter-terrorism officer at the National Intelligence Service. He explained that he was representing the Blue House, BH, and was there to escort Captain Nam. Myung-hoon perked up with curiosity at the mention of the BH. At the Blue House, someone placed a cup of tea in front of Namgung. Prime Minister Seo Jae-wook apologized for calling him so suddenly. He formally introduced himself, but Namgung reassured him that it was all right. Seo Jae-wook thanked Namgung for being the one to hunt the monster that had appeared at the Han River. Namgung told him that he was the one who should be thankful, admitting he was surprised to be called to the Blue House and not an interrogation room. Prime Minister Seo Jae-wook chuckled and said, "That's not how they treat heroes who save the city." But hearing the Prime Minister call him a hero made Namgung think. Seo Jae-wook was sitting calmly in front of someone who could defeat monsters with ease, without even a hint of caution. Namgung thought to himself that Seo Jae-wook had deserved to die at the hands of Park Dae-ho in the previous life. But this time, he needed him alive. Namgung spilled his tea onto the table and said to Seo Jae-wook that if he trusted people so easily, he would end up losing his life. The Prime Minister fell from his chair in shock as Namgung pulled out his red sword. Instantly, Seo Jae-wook's guards pointed their guns at Namgung, yelling at him to drop his weapon or be shot. Namgung told Seo Jae-wook that he was sitting in a position where he would decide the fate of the country. He added that he couldn't believe someone who couldn't even use the information Yasha had given him was now responsible for that. He called him a rascal for entrusting his life so carelessly. The guard shouted again, warning Namgung to drop the sword or be fired upon if he moved any closer, but Namgung didn't back down. He told the Prime Minister that he needed to watch out for people just as much as he did monsters, because he couldn't afford to die yet. Seo Jae-wook looked up at Namgung in confusion and nodded, replying that he would keep that in mind. Just then, Agent Park Hyo-ju threw her sword toward Namgung, yelling at him to drop his weapon. Namgung noted that she had awakened her telekinesis talent rather quickly for a normal person. He easily sliced her sword in half with his own. Hyo-ju hurled more blades, but Namgung handled them all without much effort. She glared at him, ready to continue. But Prime Minister Seo Jae-wook raised his voice, demanding she stop. He asked what she thought she was doing to their guest. Both Namgung and Hyo-ju looked over at him as he continued, saying Namgung had only been giving advice. He hadn't meant any harm. The Prime Minister told Namgung that he was thinking of creating a monster hunting team, and he wanted Namgung to lead it. That was the real reason he had been called there. Park Hyo-ju admitted that she didn't like it, but the Prime Minister was right. She said they didn't know how to use the information they had just yet, but she had seen Namgung and his teammates on CCTV. She commented on how he wielded his weapons so naturally, like someone who had been doing it all his life. She asked him to teach them too. Namgung shook his head and said he wasn't going to teach them anything, and he certainly wasn't going to lead the team. Hyo-ju shouted at him in frustration, asking how he could refuse when he had once given his body for the country, and more importantly, he was a citizen of this country. Namgung responded calmly. He said it was true he had fought to defend his country, and he had promised he always would, but it was his country he had to protect, not its government. Then he looked at Hyoju and asked whether she was waiting for her country, the government, or perhaps her father. She stared at him in disbelief. Namgung met her gaze and asked if her father was the Minister of Defense, Park Dae-ho. Namgung asked Park Hyo-ju if her father was the Minister of Defense, Park Dae-ho. She looked at him sharply and asked how he knew about her father. Namgung answered simply. It was because her father was currently preparing for a military government takeover. Hyo-ju immediately raised her voice, demanding to know what kind of nonsense he was spouting and why he was defaming her father like that. But Namgung stayed calm. He told her it wasn't nonsense. Then he asked if she'd forgotten where he came from. Unit 711. Hyo-ju scoffed and said that Unit 711 was gone now, but admitted it used to be the best team in the country, not just in combat but in information warfare too. She looked at Namgung and added that he was the leader of the 701th. Namgung asked if that gave his words any credibility now. At that moment, Prime Minister Seo Jae-wook turned to Namgung and said, if what he was saying was really true, then he should help him. He asked Namgung to join his monster hunting team so they could bring peace to the country together. Namgung shook his head and refused. He said there was no need for him to lead that team, because while it might stabilize the country and improve public opinion, it wouldn't stop Park Dae-ho. Not at all. Namgung explained that Park Dae-ho wasn't just trying to take advantage of the chaos to pull off a power grab. He was confident enough to do it using his own strength, pure force of arms. Seo Jae-wook gritted his teeth. Namgung looked him in the eye and said that in his previous life, Park Dae-ho had been powerful enough to possess rare-grade weapons and had considerable combat power for a regular man. Namgung told the Prime Minister that what the country needed right now wasn't someone to head the monster hunting team. What it needed was for Seo Jae-wook to get stronger himself, because that was the only way to stop the chaos from consuming the country. Park Hyo-ju turned to the Prime Minister and asked if they had any reason to believe the words of a civilian like Namgung, especially when even the Secret Service hadn't found any evidence of a military coup. The Prime Minister placed his hand firmly on the table and admitted that Namgung's words had no proof. But, he said, if we're talking about individual strength, then yes, it makes sense. He added that no matter how good someone is at politics, there's always the risk of being crushed by a single, overwhelming force. That's just how the world works. Namgung turned back to Park Hyo-ju and asked what she thought now. She looked up at him and he explained that what mattered was knowing what she wanted to fight for. She began to think. Namgung watched her closely. He realized he could ask these questions only because he already knew the outcome from his past life. To her this might feel rhetorical, but to him her answer didn't really matter. Not unless her heart had completely changed from who she was back then. She opened her mouth to respond, but another man interrupted. He said this was a different kind of conversation, and not one they should be having in front of the Prime Minister. He added that they still didn't have proof, so they should ask their intelligence unit to investigate and discuss everything in a meeting later. Prime Minister Seo Jae-wook nodded and said the man was right. They'd talk about it another time. As the doors closed behind them, Namgung began walking out. Park Hyo-ju quickly followed. She told him she was coming with him. Then she asked, quietly, what he did when he had an enemy he couldn't beat. Namgung looked at her and realized she finally understood what kind of situation they were in. He replied that such things didn't exist. If someone couldn't win, it was because they weren't strong enough. Hyo-ju said that trying over and over again didn't guarantee a win. Namgung answered that maybe that was true, in a normal world. Then he told her to come to Mahjong Market tomorrow evening. If she really wanted to know how to become stronger, she asked why, all of a sudden, she had to go there. Namgung explained that the best swordsmen in Seoul weren't in the NIS or the Special Forces. If she wanted to be the best, she had to learn from the best. The next day, Namgung and Park Hyo-ju arrived at the Mahjong livestock market. The butchers were busy cutting meat and calling out to each other. Hyo-ju looked around, watching them drag monstrous chunks of meat, and asked Namgung why everyone had monsters when they were supposed to disappear after dying. Namgung answered casually that the monsters were still alive, just frozen that way so they could be eaten. Hyo-ju stared at the meat in disgust after hearing that. Namgung spotted the chairman of the livestock market, Jang Gil-soo, and led her to his shop. Jang Gil-soo was chewing meat as they approached. He looked at Namgung and asked why he was here. He added that if Namgung came looking for meat, he was in the wrong place. None of the farms that used to sell meat here were in business anymore. Namgung said he was in the right place. Then he asked Jang Gil-soo if he was eating lizard man meat. Park Hyo-ju immediately covered her mouth in disgust. Jang Gil-soo snapped back at Namgung, saying the meat wasn't for sale, and that Namgung wouldn't even be able to eat it, so he should mind his own business. Hyo-ju looked at Namgung incredulously, and asked if this was the best swordsman in Seoul he had mentioned. She said it didn't look like he'd be getting any kind of lesson from someone like that. Namgung just replied that he knew he had to try harder. Then, without warning, he snatched the lizard man meat from Jang Gil-soo, rolled up his sleeves, and put on a pair of gloves. He turned on the stove and started chopping up ingredients. After adding a few drops of something from a bottle he carried, he cooked the meat and plated it. Namgung told Jang Gil-soo that even someone with special qualities had limits. What mattered wasn't just how much he ate, but how he ate. Then he asked if what he was saying was wrong, and called him the gluttonous king. Jang Gil-soo stared at the dish in disbelief, unable to say anything as Namgung finished preparing the meal, and asks him who he is. He tells Namgung that demon meat evaporates when heated, so they prepare shabu-shabu to keep the meat in its original shape as much as possible. Jang Gil-soo asks Namgung if he has actually ever eaten a demon before. Namgung replies that he has eaten a whole lot of them. Park Hyo-ju looks at Namgung in disbelief and asks him if he is serious. Jang Gil-soo chuckles, saying he cannot believe he's not the only one who eats this tasteless stuff. He tells Namgung that he eats it even though he doesn't want to, because of his gluttony status. Jang Gil-soo asks if Namgung eats it for the same reason. Namgung denies it and says he eats it for the taste. Jang Gil-soo glares at Namgung angrily, saying he thanks him for making him a meal, but if he's here to make fun of him, he should get lost. He states that demon meat doesn't have a taste, and it's almost like eating rubber. Namgung points at the shabu-shabu and tells Jang Gil-soo that he should try it. Jang Gil-soo thinks for a moment, then picks up a little bite with his chopsticks and takes a bite. His eyes widen, and he looks at the meal again, remarking that it's as good as 5-star beef. Jang Gil-soo asks Namgung how he did it, saying that he has tried all kinds of dishes but could never find something like this. Namgung shows him the bottle of Cruisen West Beach salt jam, saying he'll never find this taste in human recipes. Jang Gil-soo reads the label and sees that the salt jam costs 100,000 heads. He states that it's a normal seasoning. Namgung says Jang Gil-soo can keep it, if he does him 2 favors. The first, Namgung says, is that Jang Gil-soo has to tell him about his knowledge of dismantling demons. Hearing this, Hyo-ju asks Namgung why he's asking Jang Gil-soo how to dismember a demon rather than how to use a knife. Jang Gil-soo asks if Namgung is also a butcher, because his knowledge is useless compared to that seasoning, and asks why he wants to learn it. Namgung replies that it's not useless. He asks Jang Gil-soo if he hasn't found out their weaknesses while studying demon dismantling. Jang Gil-soo replies that he didn't specifically find weaknesses, he specialized in how their bodies work and how to dismember them. Namgung says that's exactly what he wants and would gladly trade the seasoning for that knowledge. Hyo-ju interrupts, asking if it's true that every time the door closes, a new monster appears. So they're going to learn how to dismantle them but not kill them? Namgung tells Hyo-ju she's only experienced the Hellgate twice, and she's making generalizations. He says the demons aren't done yet and asks if she's forgotten about the Hour of Darkness. Jang Gil-soo says he'd be happy to trade that knowledge for the seasoning, but if it costs 100,000 heads, Namgung must have a handful of them. He asks if Namgung really needs to know this. Namgung points at Park Hyo-ju and tells him that he's teaching her, not himself. He adds that if she can hunt more efficiently with this knowledge, he'd be happy with that. Park Hyo-ju knows her telekinesis is precise in movement but weak in power, and it would be more efficient to exploit weaknesses rather than increase destructive power. She realizes Namgung has already figured that out. Namgung says 3 days of teaching will be enough, because in 3 days, the Hour of Darkness will begin. Jang Gil-soo chuckles and places a hand on Namgung's shoulder, saying he should be able to do that in 3 days, and that he'll do it with him. Namgung begins to tell Jang Gil-soo the second favor, but suddenly everyone begins to run. They wonder what is happening. Another butcher informs them that there's a black hole at the market's entrance. They walk toward it, and Jang Gil-soo asks what's going on all of a sudden. Namgung says his second request is for Jang Gil-soo to prepare a different type of beef. Jang Gil-soo looks confused, and Namgung, with a smirk, explains that he would like some Minotaur beef. At Namgung's house, Myung-hoon comes back carrying some bags, and Somin greets him. He asks if she's still awake. Smiling, he shows her the bags and says the grocery store is handing out food, but there's a limited supply, so she has to go fast if she wants some. He tells her that in the meantime, he'll prepare breakfast. Somin, playing cards with Kyung-in while sitting on a chair, tells Kyung-in that Myung-hoon's cooking skills are very good. She asks Myung-hoon about her dad. He informs her that Namgung is out raiding a dungeon. Somin asks if her dad left them out and whether the dungeon's reward is based on the number of participants, if it's better if they all go together. Myung-hoon replies that he thought so too, but saw that the dungeon has a limited number of entrances. Kyung-in asks if it's to adjust difficulty. Somin replies that it's because it's a sacrifice. Namgung tells Park Hyo-ju and Jang Gil-soo that they are not participants in the dungeon. They go in as offerings. They ask what he means. He explains that they've probably heard the story of the labyrinth built by King Minos of Crete to imprison a half-man, half-bull monster, Labyrinthos. Namgung tells them that to appease the monster's anger, 7 bachelors and virgins were sacrificed each year. Hyoju asks if he's talking about that myth. Namgung replies that she knows it, but it's a little different from the version they've heard. He says only 3 people are allowed to enter this place, a man and a woman to be sacrificed, and a guide. That's the only allowed combination. Jang Gil-soo and Park Hyo-ju look at him in disbelief, and Namgung adds that when they die, another 3 can enter, and they have a total of 7 chances. They walk downstairs, and Park Hyo-ju and Jang Gil-soo ask Namgung what happens if they fail. Namgung replies that the door to the labyrinth opens, the Minotaur is released, and it eats the sacrifices until its stomach bursts, making it stronger. As they approach the gate, Park Hyo-ju comments that sounds like trouble. Namgung reassures her not to worry, saying they won't fail. Hyo-ju places her hands on Jang Gil-soo's shoulders and says Namgung is a master catcher, so she's sure he'll be fine. But Jang Gil-soo is a civilian, and he's never dismantled a Minotaur before. She says he won't know its weaknesses. Namgung agrees that Jang Gil-soo hasn't dismantled a Minotaur, but adds that he's the best at catching cows in Korea. Hearing this, Jang Gil-soo laughs and says Namgung is a good talker. He declares with excitement that he'll make the Minotaur very tasty. Namgung looks at Jang Gil-soo's excited expression and realizes he is the best for the job. Namgung knows that, in his previous life, Jang Gil-soo was the one who defeated the Minotaur dungeon. They stand in front of the gate, and Namgung informs them that once they're inside, they will be split up. He declares that he doesn't know if it will help, but the tip is, go right when in doubt. Hyo-ju looks at him with widened eyes, and Namgung pushes the door open. As Namgung walks inside, he receives a notification. He has entered the labyrinth of the Minotaur, has become a sacrifice, and must now go through the maze and reach the altar. So, Namgung looks up at the maze. Namgung walks through the maze as he receives a notification. Remaining sacrifices, 3. No sacrifice has reached the altar yet. Namgung says that the number of sacrifices probably refers to those still in the labyrinth, and fortunately, they can use the notification window to check the status of their teammates. As Namgung continues walking, his foot splashes into water. He wonders why there is water under this scorching sun. Kneeling down, he touches the water and receives a notification. You have unlocked the Jewel of the Water Dragon. Aquatic beings begin flying through the maze in all directions. Namgung closes his eyes, realizing that the rules from his previous life still apply here. One rule stands out. All world boss rewards are designed to aid in dungeon conquest. He looks at the jewel now wrapped around his wrist and thinks to himself that he wasn't fixated on world boss rewards for that reason alone. No one had ever accomplished it in his previous life, but he's not so sure about this time. Turning around, Namgung thinks about how all the aquatic beings died in the same place. That can only mean one thing. There must be an owner of the labyrinth. Namgung continues walking and looks around, thinking that the direction is accurate, but he keeps circling the same path. He realizes that this is not just a simple labyrinth. Then, he hears footsteps. He turns around to see Park Hyo-ju running toward him, pleading for help. Her face is covered in red marks. She cries out that all the unit members were killed by monsters. Namgung grabs her shoulders and tries to calm her, reminding her that only 3 of them entered the labyrinth. He urges her to get a hold of herself, but Park Hyo-ju's face keeps becoming more horrific. She insists that all their unit members are dead, accusing Namgung of sending them into the tunnel. She scratches his shoulder, shouting that he ordered them to stay inside and buy time while he went off to catch the demon alone. Her face continues to twist grotesquely as she hisses that he collects their heads and returns to the past by himself. She repeats her accusation. He sacrificed their comrades. Namgung finally pushes her away and yells for her to stop talking nonsense. Hyo-ju hits the ground, sits up, and asks if he truly believes he regressed, if the last demon he caught from the stump is even dead. She groans and asks if he's ever considered the possibility that he was deceived by the demon in the stump and is now trapped in an eternal dream. Namgung grits his teeth, wondering if this is an illusion conjured by the labyrinth. Hyo-ju fully transforms into a horrific monster, snarling that he never collected all 666 demon heads, that the regressed life he remembers is all an illusion. The monster tells Namgung that, just like the comrades he abandoned, he is stuck in hell. Undead figures rise from a blood pool and begin to touch Namgung, whispering that they trusted him, and that he used them, sent them to die. The monster places its massive palm on Namgung's head and declares there was never any regression to begin with. Namgung answers through clenched teeth. If this is reality, then he'll kill it first. He draws his red sword and declares he'll slaughter all 666,666 demons, even if some still remain alive. He swings at the monster, saying that if he drove people to their deaths and regressed, if they resent him for that, then he has no regrets. His sword explodes with power, and the monster shatters into pieces. Standing in the maze, Namgung realizes the truth. This wasn't just a labyrinth, it was a prison for the mind. Yet somehow he followed the correct path. Still, he wonders how Jang Gil-soo conquered this place in the previous life. Jang Gil-soo's talent was gluttony, so he shouldn't have had resistance to mental attacks. Suddenly, a wall behind Namgung collapses, and Jang Gil-soo steps through it, cursing that he thought he was done for good. He looks at Namgung and says he thought he was the first one there. Namgung asks if he broke through the walls. Jang Gil-soo winks and replies that he just kept going straight from the entrance, since the boss is usually at the center or farthest end. Namgung smiles, realizing Jang Gil-soo used an unexpected method. He acknowledges that he's still inexperienced. Soon after, Park Hyo-ju also arrives, asking what kind of place this is and admitting she thought she'd die from the illusion. Jang Gil-soo waves at her. She thanks Namgung, saying his tip was helpful. Jang Gil-soo asks if she's talking about the tip on choosing the correct direction. Hyo-ju explains that one of the illusions showed her a subordinate whose leg had been cut off during a past operation. In the illusion, however, it was the opposite leg. That discrepancy helped her break free. Jang Gil-soo laughs, bragging that he simply broke through and got there. Hyo-ju looks at him in disbelief, but Namgung interrupts, saying it's too early for a touching reunion. He suggests they finish this and have a beef party afterward. Jang Gil-soo and Park Hyo-ju watch as Namgung walks up the stairs toward the gate. They hear a notification. Sacrifices are offered. Namgung pushes the door open, and they walk into the altar. A new message appears. All 3 sacrifices are offered at the altar. The owner of the labyrinth now appears. Chains snap, and the Minotaur breaks free, snorting heavily. The 3 of them look on as the creature lets out a thunderous roar. They all stared at the Minotaur as it let out a deafening roar. Jang Gil-soo gritted his teeth and muttered that a cow on 2 legs was disgustingly shocking. Park Hyo-ju turned to Namgung and asked if he had any strategy. Just then, the Minotaur started to advance toward them, its laser-red eyes glowing ominously. Without hesitation, Hyo-ju tried to run, but Namgung stopped her, assuring her that he had a plan. He gave a quick glance at Jang Gil-soo, who smirked and said, "I got it." Jang Gil-soo pulled out his knife and charged at the Minotaur. He slashed its stomach, drawing blood. In a swift motion, he jumped into the air in front of it. Hyo-ju and Namgung watched in awe, and Hyo-ju commented that Jang Gil-soo was surprisingly agile for his build. She turned to Namgung and asked if he was really a butcher. Namgung simply replied, "That's because Jang Gil-soo is the Gluttony King." Without hesitation, Jang Gil-soo sank his teeth into the Minotaur's skin and started eating it. He grimaced and muttered that it was gross and tasteless. As he chewed, he stared at the creature, calling it completely tactless. Gil-soo turned to Namgung and asked if he could handle the Minotaur on his own, offering that he and Hyo-ju could just take the participation reward. Namgung explained to Hyo-ju that this was the law of the jungle. He told her that Jang Gil-soo's gluttony ability had already been activated. Against animal-type demons, Jang Gil-soo's stats increased significantly, and any demon he consumed would feel intimidated, causing their stats to drop. Namgung knew that this was a perfect match for fighting Minotaurs, but there was a catch. It could be dangerous. Jang Gil-soo continued his assault on the Minotaur, jumping on its back. He taunted the beast, asking if it was afraid because his knife didn't match its size. He added that he thought the Minotaur was supposed to be a formidable dungeon boss, considering how threatened Namgung had felt. Park Hyo-ju, watching from a distance, remarked that it was an unbelievable ability. She conceded that seeking out Jang Gil-soo wasn't pointless after all. Namgung agreed, acknowledging that it was indeed a powerful talent. He then told Hyo-ju that her talent had even greater potential. She raised an eyebrow and asked what he meant. Namgung explained that the strength of her telekinesis was directly tied to her mental power, meaning she could eventually generate force far beyond her physical limits, opening up nearly limitless growth. He said that when he advised her to learn from Jang Gil-soo, it wasn't just about studying weaknesses. Namgung explained that it was about learning how to distribute power effectively in martial arts. He gestured to Jang Gil-soo, asking Hyo-ju to observe his movements and how he utilized his strength. Namgung assured her that she could adopt Jang Gil-soo's technique, turning her telekinesis ability into a one-hit kill skill that could be used in both close and long-range combat. Park Hyo-ju looked at Namgung in disbelief, questioning how he knew all this. She pointed out that even though he was the commander of the 701th unit, there was no way he could have knowledge of these things. Namgung was about to respond, but they suddenly saw Jang Gil-soo get thrown against the wall with a loud crash. Park Hyo-ju, alarmed, asked what was happening. Jang Gil-soo had clearly been dominating the Minotaur. Namgung explained that it was a rampage, an ability that boosted physical capabilities, accelerated healing, and nullified Jang Gil-soo's Law of the Jungle ability. Namgung realized that Jang Gil-soo might have underestimated the Minotaur's power, assuming it was like the other creatures he had faced. Park Hyo-ju rushed toward Jang Gil-soo, shouting that he was going to get himself killed at this rate. Namgung's mind raced. Even though Jang Gil-soo had conquered dungeons in his previous life, this situation might be different. He remembered that in his past life, Gil-soo always tackled dungeons with the help of his teammates. Namgung knew Jang Gil-soo was stubborn and proud, and offering help too quickly might create a rift between them, even if they managed to clear the dungeon. He realized that Jang Gil-soo was a crucial part of his plan, and it would be meaningless if he couldn't make him truly part of his team. Park Hyo-ju, seeing Jang Gil-soo injured, yelled at Nam-gung, asking for rear support so she could help. Nam-gung shouted back, telling her not to step in yet. Hyo-ju demanded to know why, and Nam-gung explained that Jang Gil-soo's resolve hadn't broken yet, and neither had the remaining blade in his hand. Jang Gil-soo leaped toward the Minotaur, rage fueling his every move, with his knife in hand. Park Hyo-ju and Nam-gung watched the scene with wide eyes as the battle intensified. The Minotaur's horn pierces Jang Gil-soo's stomach and he screams in agony. Though his belly fat cushions him from a fatal injury, he realizes that if this keeps up, he won't survive. Desperate for help, Jang Gil-soo calls out, his voice laced with panic. Just then, the Soul Knight drives a blade into the Minotaur's back. The beast turns, only for Captain Nam to appear out of nowhere, severing the Minotaur's horn with a swift strike. The sudden impact causes Jang Gil-soo to fall to the floor, blood seeping from his wound. He pulls the horn out of his stomach, still screaming in pain. Captain Nam quickly apologizes for stepping in, but Jang Gil-soo, despite not needing the help, is grateful for the save. He admits he can now conserve his energy, and suggests that they team up to take the monster down. Captain Nam feels a sense of relief at having helped. He knows how important Grace is to Jang Gil-soo, and he truly needs Jang by his side. Jang, recognizing that his life is now owed to Captain Nam, agrees, but then tells him they should focus on the Minotaur for the moment. Captain Nam summons his abilities, and the Soul Knights begin their attack on the Minotaur. Watching the battle unfold, Jang Gil-soo realizes that his binge-eating ability pales in comparison to what Captain Nam and his Soul Knights can do. The Minotaur, enraged by the onslaught, summons a weapon. Captain Nam is surprised. The monster is stronger than he expected. The Minotaur swings its weapon, striking the Soul Knights and causing a recoil that injures Captain Nam as well. In response, Captain Nam takes out the Serpent's Spine fragment, an item with the highest magic rank. This fragment has the power to make its bearer invisible by reflecting and refracting light, but it can only be used once per day. Captain Nam activates the fragment, turning invisible, and uses the moment of distraction to launch an attack on the Minotaur. He leaps into the air to strike from above, but much to his shock, the monster sees him. The Minotaur turns its head and retaliates with a powerful strike, hitting Captain Nam. He manages to block the blow, but Park Hyo-ju is just as stunned as Captain Nam. She can't believe the Minotaur can see him even while invisible. Undeterred, Captain Nam throws a swinging weapon at the Minotaur, while the Soul Knight defends against the creature's blows. Despite the precise aim, Captain Nam's attack misses. The Minotaur, furious, charges at Captain Nam. Just as it closes the distance, a potion flies through the air and strikes the Minotaur, causing it to halt in pain. Jang Gil-soo, using his quick thinking, realizes that the reason the Minotaur could see Captain Nam was due to his smell. Seizing the opportunity, Captain Nam leaps once again, this time successfully attacking from above. His sword sinks into the Minotaur's head. As the monster stumbles, Jang Gil-soo tells Park Hyo-ju to cut off the Minotaur's tendons. She uses her telekinesis to stab at its legs, pouring every ounce of her strength into severing them. But the daggers seem ineffective, and the monster refuses to fall. Captain Nam, growing impatient, steps in. He pulls his sword free, and with a final, brutal thrust, drives it through the Minotaur's head and out its neck. As the beast falls to its back, Captain Nam tries to pull his sword from the Minotaur's body, but in its dying moments, the Minotaur wraps its tail around Captain Nam's legs, pulling him to the ground. It lets out a final agonizing scream. Desperate to save him, Jang Gil-soo and Park Hyo-ju both scream out to Captain Nam, their voices filled with panic. The Minotaur charges in, axe raised, aiming to take down Captain Nam, but Park Hyo-ju steps in just in time, stopping its attack with her telekinesis. She's already pushing beyond her limits though, and can't hold on for long. Her power gives out. That's when Captain Nam makes his move. With one powerful swing, he splits the Minotaur clean in half. Its body hits the floor in 2 pieces, and the system chimes in. The maze has been cleared. Park Hyo-ju celebrates the hard-earned victory. As a reward for participating, the system grants them basic maze loot. 2 items. The loot can be claimed by one of the reward recipients. Jang Gil-soo, never one to miss a jab, says that for someone who talked so confidently, Captain Nam sure looked like he was struggling. If Park Hyo-ju hadn't helped, who knows what would have happened. Captain Nam agrees, but Park hesitates. In her mind, all she did was throw the sword as Gil-soo had told her. Gil-soo, though, reminds her that Captain Nam had helped him, and she was the one who blocked the Minotaur with its own axe. None of it would have been possible without her. When they open the reward chest, they find something unexpected. Minos King's white bull. It can be exchanged for heads with the delegate clan, is tradable between recipients, and has a value of 30,000 heads. Alongside it is Minos King's red bull with similar properties. The final item is even more curious. The Minotaur's liver, carrying the highest magic rank. Consuming it grants one of the Minotaur's attributes, but it's not something anyone can just eat. If it's spit out, the liver loses its freshness and the effect disappears. Park Hyoju and Jang Gil-soo are grossed out by the reward, but Captain Nam sees it differently. To him, it's exactly what they need, and he gives it to Gil-soo. At first, Gil-soo hesitates, but Captain Nam forcefully stuffs the liver into his mouth. The smell hits Gil-soo every time he breathes, but in the end, the reward proves its worth. He gains the Minotaur's regeneration ability, and his belly wound heals instantly. In a smaller chest, Captain Nam finds another item, a Nest teleport scroll. The number and rank of the item are unknown. It's a special teleportation scroll, usable only by qualified individuals to access certain hidden places. Neither Captain Nam nor Park Hyoju has any clue what it actually does. The lack of numbering on the item is unusual. Captain Nam has never seen anything like it, not even in his previous life. Gil-soo's disappointed. He thought a dungeon boss would drop something more exciting, but all they got was a mysterious scrap of paper no one understands. He even feels guilty for receiving the good reward. Captain Nam shrugs it off. Without his gluttony ability, Gil-soo wouldn't have been able to swallow the liver in the first place. Park Hyoju comments that the scroll looks more like an old ticket than a powerful item and wonders if it's a trap. Still, Captain Nam decides to keep it and they move on. Compared to the graveyard of the Ghoul King, this ticket feels underwhelming. Then suddenly, the system announces that the Minotaur's soul has been discovered and asks Captain Nam if he wants to subjugate it. He turns around and there it is, the Minotaur's soul. But there's a problem. The maximum number of souls he can subjugate has already been reached. All 3 slots are filled. If he wants to tame the Minotaur, he'll need to give one of them up. He knows dungeon bosses can be useful, but he wonders whether this monster would even agree to follow him. He asks the Minotaur if it wants to devote itself to him and continue its existence. The Minotaur replies that it wants to get out. It takes on a human shape, confusing Gil-soo. Park Hyoju explains that the Minotaur is a half-human, half-bull creature, so part of him is human. His real name, she says, is Asterion. Captain Nam is surprised, but also amused. Classic Park Hyoju, knowing random mythological trivia. The Minotaur, Asterion, promises to do anything for him. Captain Nam tells him that to make a contract, one of his current soul knights must be eliminated. He asks Asterion if he's strong enough to defeat one of them, but Asterion doesn't want to kill anyone anymore. Instead, he places his hand on Captain Nam's head, and in that moment, his essence is absorbed. A surge of power courses through Nam's body, and something changes. His limit increases. The number of available subjugation slots jumps from 3 to 4 due to his contact with this higher spirit. Asterion fuses with the Soul Knight's armor, summons his weapon, and completes the Requiem's subjugation. Now, the Soul Knight belongs to Nam, and kneeling before him is Asterion, clad in the armor of a knight sworn to serve. The Requiem's energy surges, strengthening the souls of the knights. Their forms begin to shift, enhanced, refined. Now fully transformed into Soul Knights, they kneel before Nam in unison. Nam watches them and realizes things are finally starting to take an interesting turn. Outside the dungeon, Nam pulls Gil-soo aside and tells him to keep everything that happened today a secret. He doesn't want to be dragged into the public eye, especially not because of something tied to the 7-Eleven division. Gil-soo nods. He knows all too well that fame from something like this only brings trouble. As the chairman, he promises to keep it quiet. Honestly, he'd much rather have Nam as a friend than be on the opposite side of someone like him. Nam extends his hand. He wants to join forces with Mahjong's artificers. The alliance isn't just strategy, it also ensures security for both sides in a world rapidly spiraling into chaos. A few locals come up to thank Gil-soo, and as he laughs and talks with them, Park Hyoju silently watches. That's when it clicks for her. That's where Gil-soo gets his strength. The people. Before leaving, Captain Nam says his goodbyes to Gil-soo. He figures the first thing on his to-do list should be buying a new weapon, especially since the jam container got smashed. Watching them leave stirs something in Gil-soo. He's a bit sad, but he still sends them off with a smile. Before they go, Nam asks Gil-soo for a favor. He wants to know if he can find someone named Man Deok-soo in No Won-gu, a guy who runs a hardware store. In Nam's past life, Deok-soo was known as the king of the workshop. The man could craft any tool or survival item without fail. Gil-soo nods, says he'll check in with his connections there, and sees them off. On the way back, Park Hyoju asks Nam what she should do now. Nam reminds her she was supposed to train under Jang Gil-soo to learn swordsmanship, but she shakes her head. She's not talking about that. She means her father's business. Nam tells her the same thing he told the Prime Minister. Without power, you can't do anything. If she wants to have a say, she needs to grow stronger, hunt monsters, build herself up. Hyoju says she wants to work for the country, and since she's already fighting monsters, Nam suggests she take charge of the monster extermination team. He adds that it's probably safe to trust Minister Park Dae-ho, at least a little. He's ambitious, yes, but he wouldn't ruin the country just to satisfy that ambition. Hyoju looks at Nam surprised. He talks like he knows her. Nam doesn't confirm or deny it. Instead, he tells her there's something they need to resolve first. Hyoju assumes he's talking about the twilight hour, but Nam corrects her. It's not that. It's the fanatics, the ones who cry about the end of the world. She frowns. Hyoju thinks calling them fanatics is harsh. They're just protesters in her eyes. But Nam insists. He tells her flat out, Incheon will disappear because of them. Then he reveals something big. The chairman of Cheonil Corporation, Shin Tae-hwa, was the leader of the Heavenly One Association. It all started in Incheon and spread like wildfire across the country. He went from a gang leader to the head of a global criminal organization, built a company on top of it, but he won't stop there. He'll build a religion, and behind him, one of the revelators. Hyoju stares at Nam, confused. She doesn't know what a revelator is. Nam tells her he'll explain everything. 2 days from now, at dawn, at Incheon Port. Until then, she needs to focus on her training with Gilsoo. She stands in silence, her face falling, unsure of what to say. A car pulls up. Nam gets in, picked up right on time thanks to Somin, who insisted on waiting for her dad. Myung-hoon had made it in time because of her. Nam gives Somin a small pat on the head and tells her, "Good work." She hugs him tightly and asks if he's okay. She's worried. He still hasn't fully recovered from the fight with the Ghoul King. Myung-hoon asks if Nam told the NIS agent about the regressor, but Nam shakes his head. He figures being seen as a suspiciously knowledgeable and powerful man is already dangerous enough. The revelators already know about the regressors through the phases. If Nam starts acting like one, they'll be on him in no time, coming to Korea to find him. They'll send people like Alec Truman and Nina Kawa to deal with the monsters, and they'll keep digging until they find the regressor's identity. Salmon's worried her dad will push himself too hard. Nam sighs. He's exhausted. He tells them if he closes his eyes now, he might not wake up for a whole day. Myung-hoon chuckles and tells him to sleep. He'll wake him up when they arrive at Incheon Port. Salmon says she'll stay up and watch him while he rests. While they're on their way to Incheon Port, Nam stays asleep in the car. When he opens his eyes, he finds himself in a pit. The teleportation ticket glows red in his hand, and it makes him wonder if it's the thing that created this space. A system message appears, confirming Nam as the owner and challenging him to a subquest titled Ran's Nest. Right away, Nam understands he needs to be careful. If it's a nest, then there are bound to be monsters. A red portal begins to glow in front of him. Another alert follows. Once he enters, he can't abandon the quest. It's either completion or death. Nam isn't the type to walk into something blind, especially not a quest with no visible reward. So he decides to back out. But just as he's about to reject the challenge, Asterion stops him. Asterion, the master of the labyrinth, and the one who gave him the ticket, tells Nam to take it. Trusting Asterion's confidence, Nam decides to go through with it. He walks into the portal. It closes shut behind him. Now he has no choice. It's do or die. Suddenly Nam hears a voice echo inside his head, telepathically asking who he is. Nam raises the glowing ticket in his hand and says, this is what brought him here, and all he knows is that the place is called Ran's Nest. He assumes the voice belongs to the demon who owns the place, Ran. Then, glowing red eyes appear in the darkness. A massive monster steps forward and tells Nam that Ran isn't a monster, it's a phase. That clears things up. This thing isn't Ran. Nam asks the monster directly about the whereabouts of Ran. From the shadows, the giant creature steps into view, revealing multiple heads fused into its massive body, one of a wolf, an eagle, a human, and something truly monstrous. Nam looks at it and mockingly guesses if he devoured Ran. Meanwhile, in the Shadow Council, a phase is furious that Nam opened Ran's nest. Another phase tries to calm him down, saying the timeline has already shifted and unexpected developments should be expected. But the first one argues that the regressor reset the timeline, which led to this version of the carnival. The regressor's presence makes things unfair. So, they argue it's only fair if certain events happen that even the regressor doesn't know about. But the other phase calls that idea ridiculous. The carnival has already begun, and interfering now would be a violation of the rules. He tells Yor to calm down. Yor doesn't take it well. He threatens to erase the other phase if he mentions his name in the Shadow Hall again. But the other scoffs. Everyone already knows who everyone is anyway. They all agree the Revelator stands out, but right now, he's still being tested. The real issue isn't the Revelator, it's the regressor, who's proven to be even more cunning than the Seven Snakes. And even if a regressor has been chosen already, they might not have used them yet. Worse, no one knows if the Revelator is secretly harboring a regressor. Suddenly, another portal opens above them. A voice cuts in, telling the observer of the sun and moon to shut up. The speaker accuses Durga of messing with the return agreement, saying he fast-forwarded future events just to keep things fair. But Yor isn't buying it. He knows Durga's just scared that his Revelator will come back and consume everything. Durga responds by stepping through another portal, calmly saying he hasn't broken any rules. The carnival spans 50 years, and what happens in that time is fair game. The gateways are locked by time, and Nam just stumbled into one of them. They assure Yor that if Nam isn't a regressor, he has nothing to fear. The monster they sent him to feeds on time itself. Yor, however, isn't convinced. He warns them that by sending his Revelator into something meant to appear 30 years from now, If Nam survives, suspicion will fall on their own revelators next. Right now, Namgung's survival is the only thing Yor can rely on. Back in the nest, the monster sneers at Nam for thinking a mere beast like him could have devoured a phase. It says Nam is insulting his role as a revelator, but Nam isn't interested in playing the phases game. He knows they only see him as a pawn, and he plans to use them the same way they're trying to use him. The monster tilts its head, amused. He wonders out loud why the phases would choose someone like Nam as a revelator. But Nam has no interest in entertaining the monster's insecurity. He cuts straight to the point and demands to know how to complete the quest. The monster obliges. He extends his hand and reveals a piece of raw flesh, Ran's flesh. To clear the quest, all Nam has to do is eat it. And the reward? It's greater than anything Nam can even imagine. If he's lucky, he might even gain Phase's powers. Nam, taken aback, tries to confirm, can he really gain Phase's powers just by eating it? Then he asks the monster, who exactly is Ran? There are only supposed to be 8 phases. But the monster just grins and tells Nam the number of phases isn't fixed. Across all the worlds, phases have risen and fallen countless times. Ran is the oldest of them all, not one of the young ones who started the carnival. He's far older, from long before Olympus or Muspelheim even existed. Ran used to be the most powerful being of all time, but with time, the positions of phase shift. Just like the carnival, it repeats itself. That detail catches Nam off guard. The carnival repeating? That's new. The monster tells him it's not just a twisted game for the phases. The carnival is how the worlds either prosper or decay. It's how they evolve and transform. That's what history is. Nam finds it ridiculous. History being something written by someone else. For them. But the monster corrects him. No, it wasn't made for him. People like Nam are always the central players in the carnival. The ones who create it, survive it, and overcome it. They only set the stage. That's when something clicks for Nam. Something the monster said suddenly makes everything clear. He narrows his eyes and asks, "How long do you plan on deceiving me?" The monster flinches slightly. When he said they set the stage, Nam caught that. The monster tries to dodge the question and tells Nam to just eat the flesh and gain the power. But Nam isn't buying it. He asks why someone powerful enough to eat a phase would be trapped down here. The monster pretends to be surprised, but Nam doesn't stop. He tells him that anyone who talks about consuming a phase and refers to themselves as is already beyond ordinary beings. Nam crushes the flesh in his hand and throws it to the floor. The monster seems impressed and disappointed. If Nam had eaten it, the monster would have devoured him. Nam tells him he already figured out the phase's real motive. They sent him to devour Nam after realizing he encountered them when only the second gate had opened. That alone made him a target. Suddenly, the monster shifts. His form changes into a bright, godlike creature. Nam's heart skips a beat. What he assumed was just a bluff turns out to be real. This being is stronger than even the 8 phases. The transformed monster extends his hand toward Nam, telling him he deserves a reward for passing the trial. A brilliant golden light glows from Nam's hand. The creature tells him his name is Wu, not Mu. He's not an existence, but a lacking form. Something that has never existed since the beginning of time. Wu says he's watched every moment of the carnival unfold, and he can even tell Nam the remaining 25 years of the future, everything Nam doesn't yet know. Then, just like that, Nam wakes up. There's a faint purple glow on his hand, and it confuses him. Before he can gather his thoughts, he hears a voice, Soman calling out to him. He looks out the car window and sees her running toward him. Nam gets out of the car quickly and asks her what happened. Soman explains that some people gathered around the car and stopped them, but before she can go into detail, she cuts herself off and says that Uncle Myung-hoon is in danger. Before Nam can react, a man walks up and asks him to come with him. Nam brushes the man's hand off his shoulder and tells Myung-hoon to just drop the drama and come out already. Myung-hoon appears, casually greeting Nam with a cheerful hello like there's no trouble at all. He tells Nam he's been assessing the situation while he was asleep. As Nam and Myung-hoon talk, a group of gangsters interrupts them. Nam tells Myung-hoon to leave some of them alive. They'll need someone to question later. The gangsters charge at them. Myung-hoon scoffs at their cheap weapons, then draws his own sword to show them what a real weapon looks like. Myung-hoon freezes the thugs in place, sparing only one for interrogation. With his sword pointed at the last man standing, he demands to know who his boss is. The thug plays dumb, pretending he doesn't know anything. Myung-hoon raises the pressure, threatening him to talk, but then Nam steps in. He gives the man a cold warning. Spill everything, or he'll wish he was dead. The thug scoffs, thinking Nam won't dare kill anyone in South Korea. Nam slams him into the ground and clarifies that he never said he'd kill him, just that he'd wish for death. Shaken, the man breaks under pressure and spills everything, pointing toward another thug who's apparently in charge of Cheonil. But before he can say more, a knife pierces his skull. The boss silences him from a distance. He mutters that the chairman's too soft. Cowards always end up talking. Nam notices the man's aura and strength, impressive for his age, and asks for his name. The man introduces himself as Choi Gwang-pil, an executive of the Heavenly One Association. Seeing a chance to get some answers, Nam asks how Guangpil knew he had arrived in Incheon. Guangpil stays silent. Nam presses him. Was it Taehua from the association or Jin Wei from the triad who gave the order? Guangpil just smirks and starts circling Nam like a predator. He mocks him, calling him a dead man walking, and laughs at Nam's confidence as if it means anything. Despite his extreme speed, Guangpil underestimates Nam. He vanishes from sight, reappears behind Nam, and goes for a stab. But Nam shifts slightly and slams him into the ground. Guangpil may have the skills to become an executive at his age, but he's way out of his depth trying to take on Nam. To neutralize Guangpil's speed, Nam stomps on his foot, snapping it. Guangpil screams in agony as Nam threatens to cripple him for life. Finally, Guangpil breaks and tells him to go to Yunnan Terminal. That's where he was ordered to bring him. At first, he resists naming names, but under pressure, he reveals that the order came directly from the chairman. The triad showed up at the harbor recently, but the chairman made his move before they could do anything. Nam's mind starts racing with questions. Did Cheonil and Jinwei already make contact? Or maybe Jinwei found out about him from Alec Truman. With no time to waste, he tells Myung-hoon to go with So-min and join Ho-jun. Twilight is about to begin. Myung-hoon hesitates, clearly worried Nam plans to go alone. But right then, Nam gets a call from Park Hyo-ju. He turns to Myung-hoon and assures him he's not going alone. When they arrive at the abandoned terminal, Park Hyo-ju immediately asks Nam about the situation. She came as he requested but is skeptical. To her, the thugs didn't seem like cultists. Nam had told her they were forming a cult, but from what she saw, they looked more like your run-of-the-mill gangsters. Nam tells her that's just the beginning. Soon they'll move on to drugs. They've been smuggling since the 90s, using the profits to build up Cheonil Corporation's influence. Park Hyo-ju doesn't get it. Why turn it into a cult now? Nam explains that building a cult means they won't need to smuggle drugs anymore. Instead, they'll set up a manufacturing plant during the chaos of the upcoming carnival. The so-called cultists? They're actually addicts of Cheonil's new drug. But this isn't just some hallucinogen or feel-good pill. This drug kills pain completely. It turns people into numb, unfeeling meat shields. Park Hyo-ju is horrified. Even by triad standards, this feels extreme. Still, she can't wrap her head around why they'd destroy Incheon. Why ruin your own turf? Nam lays it out. Incheon will be destroyed, not because they want to, but because they too will get addicted. Cheonil might be making the drug, but they didn't invent it. The formula comes from Jin Wei, the mad alchemist, chosen by the Keeper of the Flames. Meanwhile, Nam and Hyungju get 2 tickets for the Sunflower Ferry at 3 p.m. to Baekmyung Island and head over to Gate 3. At the gate, a man directs them toward the ship. Hyungju is surprised to see the gangster's ship just sitting out in the open without a single guard around. Nam and Hyungju board the ship. Shin Tae-hwa reacts to their arrival like he'd been expecting Nam all along. He doesn't bother with formalities, even with the presence of the National Intelligence Service, and tells everyone to sit down. Nam is caught off guard that Shin Tae-hwa knows who he is and asks why he's been looking for him. Shin Tae-hwa explains that Ian Shen from the Red Root branch of the Triad was searching for Nam at dawn. He asks Nam to forgive the Coast Guard, claiming they were just doing their job. Hyungju, furious that Shin Tae-hwa was using the Coast Guard to smuggle in Triad thugs, charges at him in anger, but Nam knocks her out with a quick hit, putting her to sleep. He tells Shin Tae-hwa that Hyungju would have only gotten in the way and that they can talk more freely without her around. Shin Tae-hwa finds Nam's reckless move amusing and says he now understands why the Triad is so interested in him. Nam pushes him to spill everything, why the Triad is after him and why Shin came to him first. Shin Tae-hwa shows him a sample of the drug Berserker and reveals that the Triad wants Nam to oversee the operation. The Triad will provide the recipe, while they'll handle the manufacturing. That's why they need Korea's strongest man, Nam. It all clicks for Nam now. He realizes Shin came to him first to avoid splitting power. Nam then asks if Shin Tae-hwa really has the ability to control the Triad. In response, Shin extends his hand and displays his water element powers. This revelation shocks Nam. In his previous life, Shin Tae-hwa was nothing more than a half-asleep thug. Shin says that if Nam handles the ones already in Korea, he'll block the sea routes. No ships, no reinforcements. He presents Nam with a stack of cash and promises more once the operation begins. He tries to win Nam over, saying he's better than the Triad. He won't make him get his hands dirty with the drug. He even frames it as patriotic, protecting the country from foreign criminal influence. But Nam isn't buying it. He says walls have ears, hinting that someone's listening. Suddenly, a hand emerges from the shadow and snaps Shin Tae-hwa's neck. A man steps out from the darkness, fuming at Shin Tae-hwa for plotting behind the Triad's back. He tosses Shin's lifeless body at his own guards and turns to Nam, asking when he figured out he was there. Nam tells him he knew the moment he stepped in, which makes the man realize why the Triad has their eyes on Nam. The man introduces himself as Cheon Shin and says that if Nam had fallen for something like the Cheonil Corporation, he'd already be dead. Nam mocks him, saying he's curious to see just how dangerous Cheon Shin really is, and tells him to contact Jin Wei and make him show up in 3 seconds. Nam makes it clear he doesn't need Cheon-shin. He wants to speak face-to-face with Jin Wei. Offended by Nam's boldness, Cheon-shin clenches his fist in frustration. He warns Nam that just because the Mountain Master favors him doesn't mean he can do whatever he wants. And then, Cheon-shin disappears. Nam immediately recognizes the ability. It's not concealment. Concealment just hides someone from sight, leaving their body intact. This is different. This is assimilation, where the user blends entirely into the surroundings, becoming physically non-existent. It allows them to appear or vanish at will, making it ideal for both evasion and attack. But Nam just thinks Cheon-shin is a fool. Still invisible, Cheon-shin threatens to teach Nam some manners. Nam smirks to himself, thinking Cheon-shin is just too excited to show off his powers, like a kid playing hero. Cheon-shin brags arrogantly about his powers, calling himself gifted with exceptional strength, and claims that humanity will soon be split between those who possess power and those who don't. Confident in his state of assimilation, he attempts to attack Nam, expecting it to be effortless. But he underestimates him. Before he can land a blow, Nam strikes first, knocking Cheon-shin to the ground with brutal precision. Stunned, Cheon-shin can't believe what just happened. He's been beaten even in an assimilated state. Nam stares him down and tells him that he doesn't even understand his own abilities. The only reason he's survived this long is thanks to his raw talent. Nam didn't hit his body, he struck his soul. Physical attacks might be useless, but if it's the soul, he can attack freely. Cheon-shin is floored. He hadn't even realized souls existed. Nam doesn't give him time to dwell on it. He throws him onto the sofa and begins interrogating him. He demands to know how Jin Wei got his information. Cheon-shin confesses that they found Nam through the viral video of him taking down the serpent. But what Nam really wants to know is why they were willing to hire him based on an internet clip, especially when they don't even trust the Heavenly One Association. Cheon-shin responds bluntly. They want him for his strength. In a world that's lost all sense of trust, strength is the only currency that matters. And in their eyes, Nam is the strongest man in all of Korea. Besides, Cheon-shin is backed by the Mountain Lord himself, so betrayal isn't even on the table. That raises more concerns. Jin Wei's alchemical talents mean he can craft any potion, and it's very possible he's enhanced himself with them. If that's the case, he could be even stronger than Alec. Even Nam might find himself at a disadvantage in a direct confrontation. Cheon-shin issues a warning. Skills won't matter. The Mountain Lord will rule over every nation. Then he hands Nam a note with an address. He tells him to go there. The technicians are already preparing everything. All Nam has to do is deliver the ampules. He also instructs Nam to kill any remaining members of the Heavenly One Association if it comes to that. Nam had told him to call Jin Wei in 3 seconds, but Cheon-shin replies that he'll show up in a week. As Nam prepares to leave, he tells him not to worry about Park Hyung-ju. Since all they really know about Nam is his strength, Cheon-shin calls Ryujin and tells her to accompany him, to keep an eye on him. Ryujin, needing a ride, asks for a lift. Nam glances at her and asks if she even has her own car. As the two travel together, Ryujin tries to dig into Nam's relationship with Park Hyung-ju. Nam brushes her off. He doesn't feel obligated to explain anything to her. Her name sounds familiar, but he can't quite place it, so he assumes they've never met face to face. Turning the conversation, Nam asks about the weapon she uses. Ryujin refuses to answer, saying she doesn't owe him any explanations either. Nam shrugs and boasts about punching Cheon-shin earlier, but Ryujin doesn't seem impressed. She tells him his strength is no match for the Mountain Lord anyway, and reminds him that she serves the Mountain Lord, not him, so she has no reason to follow his orders. Nam actually admires her loyalty. Intrigued, he decides to test her skills. Suddenly, the river water begins to surge unnaturally. A giant lizard monster erupts from below, grabbing their car in its claws. Nam quickly exits the vehicle, not wasting a second. Ryujin thinks he's abandoning her, but Nam casually tells her that following him is her mission. The monster wave marks the start of the twilight hour, and they're right in the middle of it. Ryujin scrambles out the window just in time. Around them, the second wave of monsters begins, and their car now stands precariously on top of a shifting mass of monsters. The second wave of monsters begins, and Ryujin is puzzled. A herd of lizardmen surrounds them, and the lizard warrior is present too. It was supposed to appear a week after the Hellgate opened as a mid-boss, but it's shown up early, after the serpent was defeated and the twilight hour began. Without warning, the lizard warrior attacks, but Nam and Ryujin manage to evade the strike. Reptiles don't recognize friend or foe, so it attacks mindlessly. Nam suggests breaking through the horde, but Ryujin thinks it's a stupid idea since they're standing on a bridge. However, Nam is confident that if she's been assigned to keep an eye on him, she must have some skills. His words piss Ryujin off when he calls her a disposable pawn. In response, she tells him to keep up and unsheathes her hidden blades. Ryujin charges through the horde of lizardmen, cutting them down as she goes. As she looks back, ready to boast about her strength, she's surprised to see Nam confronting the lizard warrior alone. Nam figures that since he's already fighting to take down the corrupt official, he might as well deal with the lizard warrior too. Ryujin doesn't think he can defeat the giant lizard warrior by himself, so she decides to flee instead. Nam laughs at her lack of loyalty and pulls out his sword. With a swift leap, he severed the lizard warrior's head from its body, taking it down with ease. Afterward, he rips off a car door to release Park Hyung-ju. It was all part of their plan to knock her out, but the lizard warrior throwing off the car wasn't something they had anticipated. Although Hyung-ju had been awake for a while, she hadn't escaped because she needed to make the lie believable. Nam casually mentions he hit her a bit harder than intended to sell the story. However, now that the twilight hour has begun, the real challenge is just beginning. Monsters will start spawning everywhere until tomorrow, so to deal with as many as possible, Nam summons the Soul Knights. Meanwhile, Ryujin reaches the destination and stops to catch her breath. She wonders if she should have helped them since they have the Berserker ampule, but she quickly brushes off the thought, assuming they must have died anyway. Then, to her surprise, Nam and Hyung-ju appear, unharmed. They open the warehouse door to find the technicians dead. Nam isn't surprised by this. He had recognized the Triad corpses on their way here. Ryujin's focus, however, is on the machine and the equipment. She's relieved to see the machine is at least safe, and from the technician's condition, it's clear they were desperate to protect it. Ryujin comments that the Mountain Lord's intentions are obvious in this situation. She asks Nam for the ampule so they can begin the process, which will take at least an hour. Nam reflects on how much the world has changed, creating a drug in a machine like this. He tells Ryujin and Hyung-ju to stay behind and guard the place while he takes care of something else. Hyung-ju freaks out, furious that Nam is leaving her with Ryujin to guard gangsters and drugs. Ryujin asks Nam what he plans to do and confronts him about not dealing with Hyung-ju in the guest room as he promised. Nam tells her that Hyung-ju is one of them, but he also calls her a corrupt official. He pays little attention to Ryujin's concerns and tells them both to guard the place unless they want to die by his hands. Meanwhile, at the port, Nam is relieved to see the boat in working condition. If he recalls correctly, like the Goblin Lord's fortress, the serpent lays its eggs in its nest. Though the serpent was killed before it could lay eggs, the twilight hour still came even after the Hellgate was closed. The remaining monsters will still be summoned, and the rules of the higher beings still apply, meaning the serpent's eggs must still be there. With that in mind, Nam takes the boat and heads toward the serpent's nest at Jangbong Island. Nam reaches Jangbong Island and immediately notices how unnervingly quiet the surroundings are. The monsters haven't appeared yet, and he vaguely recalls a scientist mentioning that the monster's emergence is tied to human population density. But right now, that doesn't matter. He rushes toward the sea cave, where the serpent's egg is supposed to be summoned. However, upon arriving, he realizes the timing isn't ideal. The high tide is in full swing. Although he hates wasting heads, Nam has no choice. He needs to return as soon as possible, especially with twilight setting in. So, he decides to buy some gear for the dive. The Atran's deep-sea lungs will allow him to breathe underwater for 10 minutes, and the fishman's webbed hands will double his swimming speed, reusable until the duration expires. The items cost 15,000 and 5,000 heads, which feels excessive given their mediocre performance, but he knows they'll be worth it if he finds the eggs. After donning the gear, Nam dives into the water. He makes his way to the sea cave and finds the serpent's egg, but it's larger than expected. Knowing that it won't fit, he attempts to store it in his inventory anyway, but the system promptly alerts him that living beings can't be stored, so he summons Asterion to lift the egg to the surface. As expected though, it's not going to be easy. The water around him starts to swirl, and seahorses begin to surround him. Nam knows better than to underestimate their apparent weakness. He understands it's not going to be easy to fight them in the water. While he'd usually wait for low tide, he can't afford the delay with the twilight hour ticking away. Then, a thought strikes him as he spots a space filled with rubble and seagrass. He heads there, hoping to find something useful. Meanwhile, Yor watches Nam's actions from a distance, thinking he's insane for actively seeking trouble before the suspicions have even been fully settled. Just then, Yor gets summoned to the Shadow Hall. Durga, growing increasingly suspicious of Nam, questions how he knows the exact location of the serpent egg. But Yor brushes it off, stating that it's normal for an egg to be summoned during a wave. What he finds suspicious, however, is how Nam knows the precise location of the egg. Durga finds Yor's dismissal irritating and accuses Nam of being a regressor, suggesting they place restrictions on him. Yor, however, is unfazed by the accusation. Durga has no solid evidence to back up his claims, and since Nam survived Ian's nest, he points out that if Nam were truly a regressor, the monster wouldn't have let him leave. The other phases agree, acknowledging that surviving Ian's nest as a regressor is far less likely than finding the serpent's egg. Even if Nam was a regressor, they can't interfere with him, since doing so would break their laws. Calling off the quest early was already a point of contention, and they are all hesitant to push any further. One of the phases raises concerns about the possibility of Nam hatching the serpent's egg, but another dismisses it quickly, noting that, regardless of how much of a regressor Nam might be, he won't be able to hatch the serpent's egg, not until the conditions are right. Yor interrupts the debate and reveals his true form. reminding everyone of the agreement that when his chosen one returns from Ian's nest, it will be their turn next. He points out that the person who suggested Yor be chosen to go should now be the one to follow through. Yor then instructs the guide through the fog to bring forward an event that was supposed to take place 50 years from now and present it to his chosen one. The other phases oppose the demand, arguing that it's impossible. Yor retorts, calling out their hypocrisy, quick to accuse others, yet unwilling to let their chosen one be accused. As an alternative, he proposes blessing his chosen one with another gift. The other phases agree, but only if the gift is something achievable at their current stage, especially now that the second gate has opened. Everyone agrees, even though Yor knows it's not the ideal situation for him. Durga too agrees, but only as long as it's not the method for hatching the serpent's egg. Yor reassures him, saying it's not that. Instead, he plans to give his chosen one the elixir of growth. When the Hellgate opened, just as people were beginning to adapt to the changed world after receiving the delegate's message, other creatures also started adjusting in their own ways. Among them, some developed unique traits just to survive. Namgung dives deep into the ocean, searching among the sea plants for a worm called the sea rock parasite, a creature especially useful in underwater combat. It's tough, but rare and almost impossible to find outside the ocean. Its uses aren't widely known, but Namgung, having witnessed countless bizarre experiments while stuck beside that psychopath Choi Huisu, naturally picked up knowledge about its secretions and their effects. Eventually, Namgung finds the sea rock parasite. It looks like a palm-sized beetle. Seeing the amount released is enough. He swims back upward and calls out to Asterion, a soul knight, telling him he'll leave the rest to him. Namgung hangs back at a distance, watching as a sea monster attacks Asterion. Asterion does his best, but as expected, his power is weaker underwater, and the sea monster doesn't seem affected. It throws out rope-like tendrils and wraps Asterion's body, restraining him. Asterion struggles hard, trying to break free, but more sea monsters arrive and entangle him even further, rendering him unable to move or lift his axe. Namgung feels a bit guilty for putting Asterion in that position, especially since he was the one who gave the order. Still, Asterion has performed better than Namgung expected. Namgung swims in closer, weaving between the traps until he's near Asterion. He pauses there, waiting for Asterion to play his part. Grabbing the traps with both hands, Asterion holds tight while Namgung releases his power into the water, activating the effects of the sea rock parasite's secretions. The water pulses like it's carrying electricity, and the sea monsters flinch as the effects kick in. Their grip loosens. Namgung watches the secretions do their job perfectly, softening the monster's skin and paralyzing them just as he'd learned. Finally, with the monsters stunned, Namgung draws his sword. It's time to finish the job. One by one he cuts them down. Meanwhile, a group of guys on motorbikes, who had been following monsters to hunt them, yell at each other and at their leader, Sungwoo, to take the monsters down. Sungwoo's bike soars through the air and slams into a monster's face with its front wheel, while the others crash their bikes into the monster's legs to knock it off balance. The creature falls to the ground and dies in one go. One of the bikers shouts in disbelief, asking why the monsters are so weak. Another biker calls him an idiot, saying it's not that the monsters are weak, it's that Sungwoo's ability is just nuts. Sungwoo hears the praise and arrogantly tells them to shut up. Taking off his helmet, he orders them to wipe out all the remaining monsters. His friends hoot and cheer. From the window of a nearby building, Ryujin and Hyoju watch them with annoyance. Ryujin asks who those guys even are. Hyoju, clearly irritated, says that if they head this way, it's going to be a pain. Ryujin points out they're just a bunch of kids and that they can't just kill them, but Hyoju snaps back, asking if she's ever seen a government official kill someone. Ryujin scoffs, saying government people are pathetic no matter where you go, and tells Hyoju not to get worked up over nothing. That pushes Hyoju over the edge. She yells at Ryujin, calling her a thug and asking who she thinks she's talking to. Ryujin stands up with a smirk, asking Hyoju if she wants to go. Hyoju rises too, saying this is exactly what she wanted. Before the argument can escalate, the bikers outside shout again, hunting down monsters. Hyoju turns back toward the window, her eyes narrowing. She points out to Ryujin that something feels off about the way those kids are fighting the lizard men. No matter how many of them there are, they're still just kids, and yet they're tearing through lizard men like nothing. Ryujin sighs mockingly and tells Hyoju to stop being blind and look more closely. She points at the red aura glowing on the kid's shoulders, especially on Sungwoo. She says there's definitely something unusual about it. Hyoju sees it too and wonders if it's some sort of buff. Ryujin doesn't deny it, but says either way, those kids don't look friendly, and they better be cautious. Hearing Ryujin use the word us, Hyoju glares and tells her not to lump them together. Ryujin just tells her to shut up, calling her a corrupt official. Hyoju clenches her fists, trying to hold in her anger, and says she's not going to argue with her. Sungwoo, from a distance, hears the bickering and tells his allies to stay quiet. He listens carefully, then suddenly shouts toward the building, saying he knows someone's there. He says he doesn't know who they are, but unless they want to die, they better come out. No one responds. Sungwoo scoffs, kicks his bike on and mutters that he has to handle it himself. He speeds toward the building where Ryujin and Hyoju are hiding, getting closer every second, until something huge appears above his head. A massive ball-like object hovers in the sky. Sungwoo doesn't notice it at first and keeps speeding forward, but then the thing crashes down just behind him, shaking the entire ground. Sungwoo's bike launches into the air from the shockwave, and he crashes to the ground. Gritting his teeth, he looks up at the massive sphere, cursing under his breath. The ball creaks open, and Namgung casually steps out. He looks at Sungwoo and says calmly to stop making so much noise. Namgung tells Sungwoo to stop making so much noise, and that attitude instantly makes Sungwoo burn with anger. After falling onto the ground, Sungwoo regains his balance and manages to get back up on his feet. He yells at Namgung, cursing him out for almost getting crushed to death because of him, and that being all he has to say. But Namgung, intimidating as ever, just tells him to shut up. Then, turning to the other boys, he orders them to move the egg, the huge ball he came in, saying that since it's heavy anyway, this actually works out. One of the guys is shocked at the sudden order, but the other one just agrees to take care of it. Seeing them submit to Namgung like that, Sungwoo yells at them, asking if they've lost their minds. The guy who agreed simply replies that it just felt like they were supposed to move it, which makes Sungwoo sigh in frustration and call them stupid. He spits on the ground out of pure anger and calls Namgung an old man before getting up close to him, glaring straight into his eyes. He tells Namgung to forget everything else and asks what about his motorcycle, which just got crushed by the egg. Namgung, clearly not taking him seriously at all, asks if he didn't just steal it anyway, and also questions if he even has a license. That's the last straw for Sungwoo. His patience snaps, and after more cursing, he swings his arm back to punch Namgung, seething with rage and asking if Namgung really wants to settle this with just words. But right before Sungwoo's fist can reach him, Namgung puts his hand on Sungwoo's face, stopping him, and his punch, from getting any closer. Namgung calmly tells him that the way he gets all worked up and charges in head first is just like a monkey that never learned how to behave. With that, Namgung pushes his face back, sending him flying right into his allies. Then, threatening the boys once again, Namgung says he'll only say this one more time, move the egg unless they want to get kicked too. Sungwoo, burning with frustration, yells at his allies to get ready. A red aura begins glowing around them, and they're amazed that it actually worked, realizing that if Sungwoo buffs them like this, they might actually stand a chance. Namgung, watching this happen, notices something about what Sungwoo is doing. He realizes that Sungwoo can enhance the physical abilities of those around him, and wonders if he has the ability Monarch's Command. With a smirk, he compliments Sungwoo, telling him it's actually a pretty decent skill. Sungwoo smirks back, and once again calling Namgung an old man, tells him to stop acting tough. He threatens Namgung, saying that if he just hands over everything he's got, they'll let him walk away. Namgung asks what happens if he refuses. With a grin, Sungwoo says they'll just have to kick him, then yells at his boys to get him. All the guys speed up on their bikes toward Namgung, but he starts crashing each of their faces into the ground, one after another. He says to Sungwoo that no matter how much he strengthens their bodies, it doesn't make them invincible. Another biker tries to hit Namgung from behind, but Namgung crashes him to the ground too, scoffing at how reckless they are. The ones standing farther away, including Sungwoo, are sweating buckets now, their eyes wide in fear. They can't believe what they're seeing and ask Sungwoo what they're supposed to do now. Sungwoo, furious, yells at them to just overwhelm Namgung with numbers. But then, Namgung sees his soul knights joining the scene from behind the boys. He smirks and says it looks like there just wasn't enough of him. The boys look up, only to find themselves face to face with towering soul knights. They freeze in terror, completely petrified before the knights even touch them, making it incredibly easy for the soul knights to hold them all back. Namgung pulls out his sword and rests it on his shoulder. With a smug smile, he asks Sungwoo how it is, saying this should even the numbers a bit. Sungwoo grits his teeth in fury and says he'll just take Namgung on himself. He gets into a boxing stance and, with impressive speed, rushes at Namgung. But every punch he throws is effortlessly dodged. Namgung acknowledges Sungwoo's speed, stamina, and strength aren't bad, but that's about as far as it goes. His hand suddenly begins to glow with burning energy. Sungwoo sees it and immediately realizes that he's about to get crushed. Namgung punches Sungwoo hard in the stomach, using his immense prophetic power, sending him flying backward. Even as he crashes into the ground, Namgung is surprised at just how ridiculous Sungwoo's potential is. Suddenly, a red, armor-like aura begins to glow around Sungwoo as he sits up, still holding his stomach. Namgung immediately recognizes the aura. Sungwoo has awakened Warlord's command. Namgung walks over to him and, recalling his name, asks Sungwoo to become his porter. But Sungwoo, still full of arrogance, asks what the hell he's talking about. Why would he ever do that for him? Just as he's about to curse Namgung out again, Namgung gives him a deathly glare that shuts him up immediately. Trembling, Sungwoo looks down and says he only meant to ask what Namgung meant by asking him to become his porter. Namgung doesn't answer the question. Instead, switching to a topic he claims is more important, he asks Sungwoo if this was his first time using Warlord's command. Sungwoo looks confused, clearly hearing the phrase for the first time, and asks what that even is. Namgung tells him to look at his friends. Sungwoo turns to his friends, and his eyes widen in horror. They're all dead. Some have foam coming out of their mouths. Others have twisted, broken limbs. He asks Namgung what that is, and if they're really dead. Namgung confirms it, and says he'll explain it as simply as he can. He tells Sungwoo that his first ability, Monarch's Command, as he already knows, enhances the physical capabilities of those around him. But Warlord's Command is a power that exists solely for him. Sungwoo points at himself, confused, asking if that means it's only for him. Namgung nods and explains that Warlord's Command allows him to absorb the stats of the people he buffed. Sungwoo slowly gets up and walks toward his fallen friends, asking if this means they died because of him. Namgung explains that it was most likely triggered when Sungwoo sensed the danger of Namgung's attack and unconsciously activated the ability. Sungwoo stutters in fear and regret, saying over and over that he didn't know. He didn't mean for this to happen. But Namgung calmly tells him that he's not blaming him. He's just telling him all this so that he understands. Even in this broken world, no matter how much someone hates the situation they're in, they have no choice but to endure it and keep moving forward. After saying this, Namgung extends his hand towards Sungwoo and asks once again, "How about it? Will he come with him?" Sungwoo's eyes bulge nearly out of his sockets as he carries the egg inside on his back. He asks Namgung what all of this is, but Namgung simply replies that he'll get his answers once he puts the egg down somewhere appropriate. While Sungwoo carries the egg, Namgung turns to Ryujin and asks if the processing is done. She says it's almost done, and that the liquid extraction is over 95% complete. Namgung suggests that, considering the circumstances, it would be best to dilute the drug in water. He asks for her opinion, and Ryujin agrees, saying that with the time it takes to solidify, that would be the most efficient and practical approach. Pointing at the machine, Sungwoo asks Namgung what it is. Namgung answers, "It's a drug manufacturing machine." Sungwoo is stunned and says Namgung is insane for running a drug business in the middle of all this. But Namgung tells him the business isn't his. He points to Ryujin and says it's theirs, since they're with the Triads. Ryujin, trying to divert attention away from herself, tells Sungwoo to not get in the way and just stay put. Then she points to Hyo-ju and tells Sungwoo that she's an NIS agent, which only adds to his confusion about this bizarre lineup. Hyo-ju asks Namgung why he's carrying an egg. He tells her to be careful with it, because there's a serpent inside. Everyone's eyes widened in fear. Namgung explains that now that the serpent egg is out in the open, summoned lizardmen will be instinctively drawn here to protect it. Ryujin steps forward angrily, demanding to know why Namgung would do something this crazy, while Sungwoo panics and asks how many lizardmen are coming. Namgung tells them that every living lizardman is heading straight for this place. Even factoring in those that die on the way, we're still talking hundreds, if not thousands. Hearing that, Sungwoo immediately tries to escape. He tells Namgung it's been an honor serving him, however briefly, and that, foolish and ignorant as he may be, he'll now be returning to his original place. But the moment Sungwoo gets near the door, he hears noises from outside and immediately runs back to Namgung's feet, saying, "They're here." But when he peeks out, he realizes, it's not lizardmen, it's people. Namgung nods and explains that they're probably people from the Heavenly One Association, just trying to make a quick buck.